Welcome to Just a Minute. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, those who tune into the World Service, Radio 4, Radio 7, or even get us through the internet. We welcome them, and of course it's a pleasure to welcome the 4 exciting, distinctive and talented players who this week are going to play Just a Minute. We have on my left a most distinguished couple of comedians here. It is Graham Norton and Ross Noble, and sitting on my right we have a comedian and also a comic and humorous writer and, a man who's done nearly everything there is to do in our country. And the comedian is Tony Hawks and the other man is Clement Freud. Please welcome all 4 of them. And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst. She'll help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Drill Hall, and we have a lovely, delightful audience who've come from all corners of the metropolis to cheer us on our way as we start the show with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject in front of me is 10 Things I Hate. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I'm not sure 10 things. I hate garlic when it's raw. I dislike hugely desiccated coconut on anything. Therapeutic sandals. I believe that if you have some trouble with your feet, it ought to be between you and your extremities, and I want no part of it. I hate New York in June. How about you?
Clement Freud, you were the first to challenge.
Hesitation. I said, how about you, and nobody said anything.
I know, and you got in first. So you've challenged yourself, and your challenge is repetition. Is that right?
Hesitation.
Hesitation. Yes, you did hesitate, Clement, so that's the correct challenge. So I suppose I have to give you a point. Please don't make a habit of this, because it'll make my job impossible. So if you have a correct challenge, and you get a point for that, of course, so Clement's got his first point, and he's still got 36 seconds with the same subject, 10 Things I Hate, starting now.
I hate people who change the laws in games, like challenging themselves and then getting a point for it. I hate anyone who votes differently from me.
Ross challenged.
Not repetition of anyone. He hates anyone, and he hates anyone.
Yes.
Yes. I'm like a young Sherlock Holmes. How the hell?
So well done, Ross. You've got a correct challenge there for a point. And 24 seconds to tell us something about 10 things I hate, starting now.
I hate green bottles, especially when they're placed on a wall. That's why that song comes in so handy for me. 10 particular receptacles.
Tony challenge.
I was thinking he was going to go into 10 green bottle, but he cleverly tricked me.
Yeah.
Like a young Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
So, Tony, good to hear from you, but it didn't work. And, Ross, you had an incorrect challenge. You got a point for that, of course. There are 14 seconds for 10 things I hate, starting now.
I hate cats, and if there's 10 of them, that makes it worse. If you were to get those feline creatures and put them in front of me with names such as Steve, Brian, Trevor, Kevin, Archie, Terence...
I won't ask you what you would do, Ross. You got a point for speaking as the whistle went. That's what happens in this game. If anyone is speaking when that goes, he gets the extra point. It was Ross Noble who has got 3 points at the end of the round and is naturally in the lead. Tony Hawks, will you take the next round? The subject is leadership qualities. Tell us something about leadership qualities in just a minute, starting now.
It seems today when I look at the politicians, the leadership quality you need the most is to be able to state the obvious. They turn up at a major disaster and they look sad and say, this is very disappointing, isn't it? We send out our sympathy brilliantly. They never say, this is good, let's have more of this.
Clement challenge.
3 thises.
Yes, 3 thises, and quite close together too.
Yes.
So, Clement, correct challenge. 40 seconds on leadership qualities, starting now.
I think if you look at the leadership qualities of the 3 good men who run our political parties, you would stop not just hesitate or deviate, but actually stop.
Tony, challenge.
Well, repetition of stop.
Of course. Right, so you have 27 seconds, leadership qualities, Tony, starting now.
I think that Clement has great leadership qualities.
Clement, yes, Clement.
I agree.
Clement is very clever at getting bonus points. Your round of applause there endorsed that they enjoyed what you said, Clement. A bonus point for that, but Tony was interrupted, so he keeps the subject, leadership qualities, and you have still 23 seconds, Tony, starting now.
But he'll be disappointed when I go on to say, so does Nicholas Parsons. And I can tell you why I know this, because at the beginning of the show, our great man...
I hope that groan was for me. Thank you so much. Graham, you challenge first.
Repetition of the great.
Of the great,
Yes.
yes. And 10 seconds, Graham. You tell us something about leadership qualities starting now.
I think the quality a leader requires is an attractive back of head. Why else would you follow anyone? They must look well-groomed and beautiful from the reverse.
So, Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point.
Woo.
He's now equal in Tony Hawk's in second place. They're both 1 point behind Clement, Freud and Ross Noble, who are both in the lead. And Graham, it's also your turn to begin. The subject is facelifts. Tell us something about facelifts in just a minute, starting now.
I think facelifts are wonderful things. For instance, how else could Joan Rivers have achieved a look of a baboon skull with a wig on top of it? It may be expensive, but it's easier than being in a house fire. That's the way I look at it.
Ross challenge.
I thought there was a slight hesitation there. Just a slight...
No, there was a slight, but it wasn't enough to be a hesitation within
Wasn't
just a
it?
minute.
No. I think even Graham, if he was being honest...
No, he was kept going sufficiently well not to be penalised, and you have another point, Graham, and you have 44 seconds on facelifts, starting now.
Facelifts are intriguing, but quite terrifying. I think I will eventually have one. I'd quite like some...
Tony challenge.
Was there a slight hesitation there?
Well, you said have.
Yeah, I think I did.
I call that either hesitation or repetition of have.
And a deviation.
What's that?
And deviation, he'll probably have more than one.
Come on, just a minute and find out who your friends are. Tony, 36 seconds on facelift starting now.
If you need to get your face to the 9th floor and you don't fancy the stairs, the best thing is to use the facelift. You get in, press the button, and it will take you there beautifully. I do it whenever I'm in a building and need to do such thing. I have had a facelift myself. I'm really 104 years old.
Graham challenge.
I was just thinking, Sue.
What's your challenge, Graham?
Sorry, no, it was just me chatting. On you go, Tony. If you're happy, you paid for it. Go on.
You haven't a challenge when the rules are just a minute.
Oh, do I? Deviation.
Why?
From good sense.
If I gave a penalty against good sense that went on in just a minute every time, I don't think we'd ever get anywhere. Tony, no, you weren't deviating enough, and 18 seconds, facelifts with you starting now.
I'm actually an extremely ancient figure, although when you see me sat before you in the audience, they can't at home, listening on the radio, poor souls, I am not as young as I used to be, is something people tend to say, but that makes no...
Graham challenge.
Oh, no, this is nonsense.
He's talking not
it's a
any
deviation
rubbish.
from something.
It was deviation from the sense, yes. Graham, you've got him with 2 seconds to go on facelifts starting now.
I am 13 years old, but thanks to...
So Graham Norton was again speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's now increased his lead over Tony Hawks and the other two, Clement, Freud and Russ Noble. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is now nostalgia. Tell us something about nostalgia in 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
I have such very fond memories of neuralgia. Thinking back, my youth was replete with diseases that took one to Harley Street, Wimpole and Queen Anne, many doctors, surgeons, psychiatrists, psychologists, and skin care folk. Had my custom...
Ross, your challenge.
It was hesitation, but I was so hypnotised by what was going on. It was almost like my finger wouldn't press.
I know.
But there was
amazing. And the audience were as well.
Yeah.
And I think the listeners were, and they're going to be writing in about that.
I think people will just be crashing their cars.
Right. Hesitation. Ross, nostalgia's with you. 36 seconds starting now.
People often like to take a trip down memory lane, but unfortunately I knew a bloke that lived there and he wasn't very happy. The traffic was appalling. They had to introduce special calming measures. There was so many old people going along that particular byway. It was terrible
Oh, you see what happens. You get the audience with you and they want you to continue and they clap. But, Tony, you got in first, right? Hesitation?
Yes,
17 seconds. Nostalgia with you, Tony, starting now.
I read a hilarious sign the other day when I was in this office saying nostalgia isn't what it used to be. I fell about laughing. Such was the amusement incurred by this said piece of writing. Nostalgia, of course, is...
Tony Hawk, taking it to this end. He's now moved forward and he's equal with Graham Norton in the lead, just 2 points ahead of the other two. And Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject is examinations. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I've never understood why they put discuss in exam questions when you're not allowed to. Actually turned to the person next to me during the examination and did just that. And the man sent me out, saying, Hawks, you're not supposed to be chatting. Well, it was very unfair indeed. I don't understand why in this country we're so obsessed with examination.
Ross, Noble challenge.
Repetition if I don't understand.
Yes, that's right. You did say that before. Right. So, Ross, well, listen, you've got in with 37 seconds on examinations, starting now.
A popular examination is the CAT scan. Now, don't be confused. This isn't picking up a feline and going blip like that. And ASDA, oh no, that can be very, very wrong, especially very bad.
Graham challenge.
Oh, I'm sorry, but it was
it's
very,
accurate.
very,
very wrong. Yes, well, listen.
You've got me bang to rights.
Graham, 26 seconds for you. Tell us something about examinations, starting now.
The worst sort of examinations are of the medical variety. I recently did a voiceover for a biscuit and had to go for a full examination.
Tony challenge.
How much was this biscuit paying you?
Peanuts.
Give Tony a bonus point because the audience enjoyed his interruption, but Graham gets a point for being interrupted, and he still has examinations, and he has 14 seconds to continue, starting now.
In Ireland, there are two main examinations. One is called the Intermediate Certificate. This examination proves that you're somewhere in the middle. You haven't started, you haven't finished. But
I thought that was the longest elongation of a word without hesitating I've ever heard in just a minute. And your face expressed it all. But
can we introduce a new rule? Hesitation, deviation, elongation. Just to spice it up.
You mean you've been challenged for elongation?
Yeah.
It could happen, but I don't think we'll institute it now. It's going to be too difficult.
I'm up for it.
I think...
Come on, what the hell? Let's live life. Come on, it's been running 37 years. When was the last change? Let's introduce elongation. Who's with me?
Can I vote against?
The last change came when you used to have deviation from the subject when this show first started many years ago, and now it's just his deviation. So you've got all kinds of scope to be inventive and creative.
How wrong I was then.
And nearly everybody at some time has indulged in elongation, so...
We all experiment.
I'm talking about verbal elongation. I don't know where this always come from. Where was it? Oh, yes, Graham. You were speaking when the whistle went, getting an extra point for doing it. Yes, you've moved forward. You're in the lead and just 2 points ahead of Tony Hawks and 4 ahead of Ross Noble and Clement Freud.
But I'm in the lead.
You're in the lead.
No. You see, you say nothing changed in 37 years.
You are in the lead. Keep it up. Right, Ross, it's your turn.
Repetition of elongation.
I think we'll move on rapidly before we get completely bogged down. Right, Ross, it's your turn to begin. The subject is shaving. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Shaving is something you have to do very carefully, especially when you're shaving your pets, I find. I once had a cat, which I didn't like. I don't know why I bought the thing in the first place. I was so angry at the fact that I had this creature, I went and got myself a lovely razor and a bit of foam, and I shaved him up so he looked like a completely different creature. In fact, a tiny little panda.
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of creature.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm glad you got in there. I didn't like the way it was going at all. It was... I'm sure we're going to get...
We've all shaved our pets, come on.
Our pets of the humankind, but not of the...
That opened a window we wish had stayed shut.
You have to shave under your arms. A lot of people do that. Right. Tony. Hysteria has taken over the panel and the chairman is collapsing. 38 seconds for you on shaving, Tony, starting now.
Clement probably has to shave more than me because the hair on his head appears to grow inwards and come out on his chin. And this doesn't happen to me.
Clement, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, it did. Clement, you've got in with 28 seconds on shaving, starting now.
Monsieur VIII from Provence, who was a very good chef, came to me and said, what shall I do now that I've come to England? And I suggested he start a restaurant called Shaving, where he could serve the most delicious French foods to anyone who so desired. His spécialité de la maison.
Ross has challenged you for some reason.
Repetition of French.
Yes, that's right. You did say a French restaurant, and you mentioned this Frenchman who came to England.
Yes.
You look surprised.
No.
No. Ross, you had a correct challenge. 9 seconds shaving, starting now.
I went to a French restaurant once and was served badger, a frothy creature. That's right. It was the most bizarre dish.
Tony, challenge.
He said creature again.
I'm actually being sponsored.
Tony, another creature, another point to you, and 3 seconds on shaving, starting now.
I enjoy getting up in the morning and shaving in the bathroom like it's no...
So, Tony Hawk, speaking to us, who went with other points in the round, has now moved forward. He's gone one ahead of our previous leader, Graham Norton, and then it's Ross Noble and Clement Freud in that order. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject here is quite a long one, actually. My advice to the person sitting next to me. And 60 seconds, as always, is available, and you start now.
I don't actually have any advice.
Ross, big challenge.
Well, I think that's self-explanatory, that, isn't it? I'll have the subject then.
I'll give Ross a bonus point for that. But Clement, you were interrupted, so you keep the subject. You get a point, of course, and you have my advice to the person sitting next to me. 58 seconds, starting now.
My advice to the person sitting next to me would be exactly the same.
Ross challenged again.
Deviation. He said before he didn't have any advice, and now he's picking it up.
Yes,
I'll have it both ways.
That was justified, Ross. You have 53 seconds. My advice to the person sitting next to me, starting now.
The advice I'd give to the person sitting next to me is try not to be so flamboyant. Stop wearing those crazy costumes and running over town, making those camp suggestions. And Nicholas just won't listen.
I'll show you how fair I am. Right, this is such a wonderful twist there. They all thought you were talking about Graham. Give him a bonus point.
Did you?
Tony, but you challenged, Tony.
Well, believe it or not, Nicholas, and you probably won't, I was going to ruin his joke. I was going to buzz in and say, stop talking about Nicholas, you see. So, he got in there
comic
first.
Minds think alike.
Yes, exactly.
But he was in the flow, so he got in first.
He got the laugh and the point. I lose all round.
Yes.
Repetition of joke.
So he was interrupted as well, so he gets another point for that, and he keeps the subject in 44 seconds. My advice to the person sitting next to me, starting now.
I would give advice to the person sitting next to me.
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of... oh, God, it's on the title again. I've given him another point.
Is Ross paying you to interrupt him this often?
Ross, 42 seconds on the subject, starting now.
I think that the advice that I would give to the person...
To Graham Challenge.
Sorry, my mistake.
Was it just a...
I thought he was hesitating, but no, he wasn't.
I'm going all the way on this one.
40 seconds, Ross, on the subject, starting now.
The advice that I would give to the...
Repetition of would.
Yes, that's on the list. That is not on the card. The subject is my advice to the person sitting next to me. That's on the card, and you said the advice I would give twice. So, Clement, you've got in on the subject. 38 seconds, starting now.
The advice I would give to the person sitting next to me is that as I have no chance of winning this game, they should buzz me quickly.
Ross challenged.
He said, Buzz, I did. I'm not sitting next to him. But if I move my chair, can I have a point?
No, Clement, you were interrupted. You have a point for that. You have the subject still. My advice to the person sitting next to me, 30 seconds, starting now.
Ross Noble and Ross Noble and Ross Noble.
Tony Hawks.
Repetition of Graham Norton. No, repetition of Ross
I'll give you
Noble.
Ross Noble. Right, Tony, you've got the subject. 28 seconds. My advice to the person sitting next to me, starting now.
My advice to the person sitting next to me is to take out his wallet and pass £250 cash to the person on his right. This will please me, not be particularly entertained.
Graham Challenge.
Oh, now... So I've turned into a point charity down the end. No, I thought he said me twice, but it was B the second time.
B, yes.
Yes.
And me's on the card anyway.
What is what?
Person sitting next to me.
All right, clever clogs.
It's my job to point these things
I was looking
out.
stupid enough already. No need to rub it in.
15 seconds, Tony, with you on this subject, starting now.
My advice to the person sitting next to me is to come out with me after the show and we'll go clubbing. What a night, Clement and me picking up girls like it's nobody's business. I want to see him boogie the night away. Let's...
Ross Challenge.
Was that repetition of night?
Yes.
What a night it will
Go on
be.
the night, go on the tiles.
Ah.
Yes, well, listen, Ross. You've got my advice to the person sitting next to me, 2 seconds, starting now.
My advice to the person sitting next...
So Ross is getting carried away with this subject and has got many points, including one for speaking the whistle when he's now got a good lead over Tony Hawks and then Graham Norton and Clement Freud in that order. And Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is Henry VIII. Tell us something about that amazing monarch in this game, starting now.
There are not many similarities between Henry VIII and me. He had 6 wives, I've had hardly any. He had a huge palace in Hampton Court, I've got a modest property in Wimbledon. He was fat, I'm thin. And the differences go on. He split with Rome, I've just had a tiff with Milton Keynes. That's all it is. But Henry VIII was, in many ways, our finest king. He did do some marvellous things. I'm not going to list them all now because I don't want to embarrass you with my knowledge. But what I will do is tell you...
Graham Challenge.
Was there sort of hesitation there?
A sort of
Yes,
hesitation.
I drifted into
Graham.
something.
So the benefit of the doubt to you on this occasion. 27 seconds, Henry VIII with you, starting now.
What sort of dreary cut-price baby name book does the royal family have? That they must continually name their children the same thing over and that thing again. Henry the...
Ross Challenge.
Repetition of thing.
Yes, there were 2 things.
Did I?
Yes.
And there was a slight elongation as well. Just
Leave it!
Just
Leave
a slight elongation.
We haven't instituted that yet, Ross. So you
Come on,
get
you
it
know
for the
you want to.
repetition. 13 seconds, Henry VIII with you, Ross, starting now.
Henry VIII is often pictured with chicken legs, and by this I mean standing there holding one that he is about to eat. I don't mean that his particular limbs are that of that poultry creature.
Tony Challenge.
By this I mean, and then he said, I don't mean. So repetition of mean.
Yes, I mean, I don't mean.
That's just mean.
Tony, 3 seconds on Henry VIII, starting now.
I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am.
Oh dear. Right, so we're moving into the last round. I'll give you the situation as we do so. The contributions have been great all round, but the points are slightly different. Ross Noble's still in the lead. He's 2 ahead of Tony Hawks, and then a few ahead of Graham Norton and Clement Freud. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. And the subject for this last round is how to treat pregnant ladies. 60 seconds starting now.
How to treat pregnant ladies? Well, you could always take them out and buy them some big pants. That's what they like, yeah. There you go, love. Dive in. Help yourself to the largest elasticated wear that you could possibly muster. But try not to look like a clown. That's very important. How many times have I made that mistake? Bought a beautiful maternity dress, only to realise that they are, in fact, hooped pantaloons that should be given to Coco and his hilarious mates from the circus. Oh, those poor pregnant ladies as they squirt their flowers at each other, their hats flying off their head as they try and wallpaper the baby's room, hitting each other with planks in the face, falling over as everyone rolls around, confetti everywhere. A tiny little car comes in, honking and exploding as the wheels fly off right, left and centre. Who would have thought it that Mother Care would have to provide a special service that would be important to...
And Ross Noble brought it to a finish with a flourish.
I'll just
Whole
cut the
60
cable.
seconds without being interrupted. You get a point for Speaker's Whistle went, a bonus point for not being interrupted. You were already in the lead, and actually, even you weren't in the lead, I'd have given you another point as well, because the audience applause at the end was so good, but it doesn't make any difference to the final result. Clement Freud, who normally does so well, but he was rather overshadowed and pushed down into a very surprising 4th place. But that's what happens. It's the contributions more important than the points, anyway, as I always say. Graham Norton was in the lead for a long time, and then suddenly he clipsed himself and finished up in 3rd place. Tony Hawks was in 2nd place. He was 4 points behind our leader, who was Ross Noble. And Ross, I think we'll have a round of applause for your contribution. Say thank you to these 4 talented players of the game: Graham Norton, Ross Noble, Tony Hawks and Clement Freud. I thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score and blowing her whistle after the 60 seconds expired. We thank our producer Claire Jones, and also we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. We're grateful to this lovely audience who stood the test of time, come from every corner of London to cheer us on our way in the drill hall here. From our audience, from our panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, hope you've enjoyed it, but tune in the next time we play Just a Minute! Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away once more, it is my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show 4 exciting and highly talented players of the game. It's always a pleasure to welcome back that multi-talented person, great performer, comedian, writer, and now, of course, film director, that is Stephen Fry. And sitting beside him on my right is some multi-talented person in many other directions, a successful restaurateur, a successful politician, a successful writer, and also very successful for many years on Just a Minute. That is Clement Freud. And sitting on my left, we have one of Britain's most popular and most loved comedians who can be quite outstanding and quaisant and sometimes quite outrageous. That is Julian Clary. And beside him, there's another comedian and stand-up performer and also talented writer in every direction, and that is Tony Hawks. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? As is usual in this game, I'm going to ask them all to speak at some different time, if they can, on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, or repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst. She's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from that magnificent Old Vic Theatre in the Waterloo area of London. It's packed to the rafters. The gallery's full as well. But they have come from all parts of this great capital city to cheer us on our way and enjoy themselves as we start the show with Tony Hawks. Tony, the subject I have in front of me is why I'd never rely on a single source. Oh, the topicality's got you already, hasn't it? Tony, will you talk on that subject? 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I consulted all my intelligence sources before coming on this show. I had Stephen, Clement, and the very lovely Julian checked to see if they were carrying weapons of mass destruction, and none were found. But we will...
Who's that? That can't be that name there.
Stephen.
Oh, that's Stephen, right. Anyway, Stephen.
I should get booed and hissed for this because it's a small pedantic point, but he said he had us checked for weapons of mass destruction and none were found. This is deviation from English grammar. It should be none was found. I told you. I'm keeping my end up for the Radio 4 listener who cares about this kind of thing.
Stephen, as legitimately there's one sense it was a correct challenge, we give you a point for that. But Tony, a point to you for that. You keep the subject, and there are 46 seconds available. Why I'd never rely on a single source starting now.
Unlike our senior politicians of the day, I would never rely on a single intelligence source.
Stephen, you
I'm afraid it's repetition of intelligence.
Yes, you had intelligence before.
It's true.
It was a long time ago, but I did fortunately. So, Stephen, you've got in there. You've got 40 seconds. You tell us something about why I'd never rely on a single source starting now.
Well, when the Recette de Cuisine and cooking books of the world... Look, it's a stammer, all right?
Clement Freud, you challenge. Yes.
Hesitation.
I call it hesitation, yes. So you take over the subject. And there are 37 seconds. Why I'd never rely on a single source starting now.
Brand, said the king, this source is A1. And so it has remained to this day. This was a label on a bottle of rather unpleasant brown liquid, which people poured over chops and steaks. And looking at that, I always wondered whether His Majesty was at that time sane or not. 1760 to 1820 is a long time for one monarch to...
Stephen, you challenge again.
One monarch and we had A1.
Yes. Right.
Two ones. I know. I mean business now.
Yeah, business. 10 seconds. Why I'd never rely on a single source starting now.
We have Béarnaise and Hollandaise and sauce tartare, which some say was invented by Auguste Escoffier, though history is divided on the subject. There are so many to choose from, it would be absurd to rely on a single source.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Stephen Fry, and he's got more points than anybody else at the end of that round. And Julian Clary is yet to speak, so let him take the next round. Julian, the subject is stag nights.
Thank you, God.
It's playing into your hands, is it right? Stag nights, Julian, 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, of course, for me, every night is a stag event. For the dreary, lonely, heterosexual, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But imagine the scene every Friday, Saturday, or Sunday when I troll around the streets with 15 or 20 burly young men, and if I'm not chained to a lamppost naked by the end of the evening, then there's going to be a lot of questions asked. Last Friday week,
Sorry, I never see 2 Fridays. I'll hand it back to you, because I'm not
about Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And you were there as well.
Right, so Stephen, a correct challenge, or a heat of Friday. Stag Nights is with you, and you have 37 seconds starting now.
Usually pretty grim events, aren't they? The poor groom is made to feel extremely drunk and to ingest all kinds of disgusting cocktails, huge quarts of...
Tony challenge.
I think there was hesitation.
You were right, yes, of that ingestion. There was a hesitation. 29 seconds are still available, Tony Hawks. You tell us something about Stag Night starting now.
My friend Trevor is the proud owner of a Triumph Stag, and every Thursday evening he invites some of his chums round for what he calls a stag night. And it's so enjoyable, he whips up his bonnet, and in we look and see the workings of this magnificent vehicle. Sometimes we'll have a drink, but that's not absolutely necessary. In that sense, it differs from the traditional stag night, of which...
Julian challenge.
Well, he's repeated night, and it's nights in his stag night.
Well listened, yes.
And they call me a pedant.
It is the rules, audience, by the way. So, yes, he did repeat the word night, and it's Stag Nights is the subject. So, Julian, you've got him with 5 seconds to go on Stag Nights, starting now.
I've just got off a flight from New York where there were hundreds of...
Clement challenged.
He got off a flight from Mallorca.
Well, he can say that he got off a flight from New York.
In that
Trying
case,
to make it sound more glamorous.
he's a liar.
It's not against the rules, is it?
It's not against the rules to go off. He just got off a flight from New York.
What flight did you just get off?
It was Mallorca.
It
they weren't
sounds
to
very
know that.
similar, Mallorca, New Yorker.
No, I was just trying to play it fair within the rules of just a minute and fair within the... We do happen to know that you did get off a flight from
Well,
Mallorca.
we're not sure now, are we?
Yeah, I may have been lying earlier on.
Yeah, I think I give you the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you.
1 second, Julian, on Stag Nights, starting now.
There were 35.
So, Julian Clary speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's 1 point behind our leader, Stephen Fry, and then it's Tony Hawks and Clement Freud. And Stephen Fry, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is my nastiest habit.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us, have we seen it about grammar, or is it another one? 60 seconds starting now.
Pedantry on an almost industrial scale has got to be one of my nastiest habits. I suppose a loving for grammar and a desire for things to be expressed correctly may be seen as a nasty habit.
Julian challenged.
Not particularly nasty.
No, maybe. Maybe seen.
No, he did put a maybe in.
It may be.
did
I said
give
I
it a
suppose
maybe,
it
yes.
may be, because I agree, it's a lovely habit.
No, but it's still my nastiest habit with you, Stephen, and I can't read this watch at the moment. 51 seconds starting now.
One of my nastiest habits is...
Hello, Clement.
There was a very long delay.
Oh, was it?
Yes. I never know if it's my fault or not, because I said I couldn't read the watch. Yes, it was 2 seconds, actually,
Oh,
Stephen.
heavens, that's no good.
Yes, it's quite surprising. Well, in this show, it's a long time. Clement, you have another point. You have my nastiest habit starting now.
The extraordinary thing is that I have no nasty habits, therefore no nastier, let alone nastiest habits. When I...
Tony challenge.
Yes, it's impossible for him to carry on without deviating. The subject is my nastiest habit, and he cannot speak on that because he hasn't got one.
Right.
Therefore, I'm saving him the embarrassment of deviating in a second from now. Why not let's just get it all out of the way now?
Really, we call that a psychic challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Predictive.
But I think he hasn't deviated yet.
Okay.
So,
I can give you a real challenge then.
Right.
Well, just based on what we said earlier, he said habits twice, and
I
it's
know
habit
he
on the
did.
card.
I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
You can save it if you want to.
If you want me
You
to.
can still come in on it. There's
thank you.
41 seconds. My nastiest habit, Clement, starting now.
If I were to say...
You've challenged.
Yeah. He said in his earlier tranche, he said habits
He
twice.
did say habits twice. Well done. Stevens was the correct challenge. He has my nastiest habit, and he has 40 seconds starting now.
As a child, I picked my nose and ate the matter therefrom, and some people considered it extremely nasty. I thought it was delicious, and I'm afraid I found it very hard to apologise. It's a natural thing to
Tony
do.
challenged.
I think there was a repetition of found in there.
Yes.
Oh, well done.
Yes. What you found there.
Patronising is another one I'm bad at.
Right, having told us the nasty. Right, my nastiest habits with you, Tony, and you have 32 seconds starting now.
My nastiest habit is singing in the car, which I deliberately do to annoy the other passengers. Roxanne is an example of the kind of thing I can just throw in when we're at traffic lights, causing people to become tearful, upset, suicidal in some...
Julian's challenge.
Do we have 2 people? Did he say people twice? Oh, it was passengers, was it?
Passengers speaking of...
Oh,
yes.
hush my mouth. Edit that bit out.
Right. 15 seconds. Still with you, Tony. My nastiest habit starting now.
On the the M25 I will sometimes go.
I think we did have sometimes in the
You did have
previous thing,
some times
definitely. Yeah.
before, yes.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Stephen, you've got in now at last. 12 seconds, my nastiest habit, starting now.
Impatience, I suppose, cannot be considered.
Clement challenge.
He's already
I'm
supposed.
always supposing, isn't it? It's
Yes.
true, thank you. You've got to cure me of that.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
awful.
10 seconds for you, Clement, on my nastiest habit, starting now.
A Dominican monk gave me a garment which has got to be my nastiest habit. It has soup stains down the front. It has old bits of Marmite.
Well, Clement Freud justifiably got a very strong round of applause. Then he's got another point for speaking the whistle. Went. He's 2 points behind our leader, Stephen Fry, and 2 points ahead of Tony Hawks and Julian Clary. And Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is bright young things. Tony, 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Quite why I was overlooked as the male lead in Bright Young Things, the movie that was made recently, is something I hope to take up with the director if I ever get the chance to find out who that was. Not long ago, I was deeply disappointed to be invited on a show called Grumpy Old Men. And I believed I should have been asked onto one called Bright Young Things because I am bright, I'm relatively young if you compare me with the oldest man in the world, who's something in the region of 117 years old, and I have a thing. A fine one, which I polish on a regular basis, Thursday or Friday evenings, usually set aside for that task.
Clement challenge.
He repeated old. I let him go on a bit because I haven't got much to say.
Yes, you did repeat old, Tony. So, Clement, a correct challenge. 18 seconds. Bright young things starting now.
Being a bright young thing is very much in the eyes of the beholder. I personally use a stair lift and a walk-in bath, and bright young things in general are to be found, like Dame Thora Hearn, the late lamented, waving as they disappear.
So Clement's making a late surge. He's got another point. Speaker's whistle went. He's now equal with Stephen Fry in the lead, and the other two are just behind him. And Julian Clary, your turn to begin. The subject now is how I usually spend Sundays. Will you talk on that subject starting now?
I usually spend Sundays on my knees, which doesn't particularly make it any different from any other day of the week. But then I nip home, I open the oven, and I prod the joint. You take a great big fork out of a drawer, and you just get on with it. Then I might have some friends round for a pleasant soiree. Could be compared to a stag night, but is not necessarily an all-male event, if you know what I'm saying. And then perhaps I'll turn...
Tony challenge.
Well, actually, I thought he was going to hesitate, but then I think he recovered at the last minute, so I'd like to withdraw my challenge.
He did recover at the last
Yes,
minute,
it was almost like skillfully dummying a hesitation. I didn't realise he was quite so proficient.
Maybe you were predicting again. Your
Yes,
psychic
possibly.
ways.
But the fact is he was interrupted, so he gets a point
Yes.
for that. And Julian, you carry on with 35 seconds to go on how I usually spend Sundays starting now.
Last Sunday, I was performing at the Birmingham Hippodrome, and I had awful food poisoning, and someone had to stand in the wings with a bucket, and I would rush off between each scene and do what came naturally. That's not a usual way to spend a Sunday, but that's what I found I was doing. It was our final performance, and at the end, the crowd stood up and roared. I don't know why, because I hadn't been at my best. I was rather pale and pasty. But way up in the wings, up at the top of the theatre, I could see my mother winking at me.
Tony challenge.
I want to hear more about how he usually spends his Sundays, and less about this one specific Sunday.
Well, I had been in the show for 6 weeks, so that had been my usual Sunday routine.
No, that was a correct challenge because you were talking about one specific Sunday and not
All right.
how I usually spend Sundays. You don't usually spend Sundays being sick like that. And,
That's
so
for me to know.
just because you're partisan, I still have the rules to interpret. And Tony, your challenge was correct. That was deviation. So you take how I usually spend Sundays, and you have 5 seconds starting now.
I usually spend Sundays in the audience at the Birmingham Hippodrome, where I love watching Julian.
So Tony Hawks, for speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now moved forward. He's only 2 behind Clement, Freud and Stephen Fry are two leaders. Julian's just behind him, and Clement, your turn to begin. The subject now, the importance of art. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
I don't think art, which is a diminutive of Arthur, is particularly important. I believe that man to be genuinely second-rate, as are Bernard, Charles, David, Eric, Francis, George.
Stephen Chance.
I believe we have a rule against listing.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
Oh, don't you?
No.
Oh, I always thought there was.
Could have two extra points.
No.
Hello.
So, an incorrect challenge. Clement, another point to you. 46 seconds on the importance of art, starting now.
The importance of art when it comes to listing is really pretty important.
Oh, it's a tough game. Yes, Tony, you were first to challenge.
How many years have you been playing this game? I love it when people repeat things consecutively. It makes it always like...
Right, the importance of art is with you, Tony, and there are 41 seconds starting now.
Paul Simon would have felt that the importance of art was something that mattered to him, as Simon and Garfunkel would never have operated, obviously.
Stephen.
Double Simon, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
two Simons. So we have the importance of art with you, Stephen. 33 seconds available starting now.
There's a paradox at the heart of this. Wine, love, and art are all absolutely unnecessary to the furtherance of the human spirit, and yet, therefore, somehow are the most important things we have. It's the necessities. Hello?
Tony, challenge.
Was there a repetition of important?
No, importance was in before, wasn't it? An important then?
Right, okay.
I think.
Fine.
So someone in the audience disagrees. Some of the audience wants me out of that.
Right. 23 seconds. Another point to you, Stephen. The importance of art.
It's a
starting
kind
now.
of spiritual food, I suppose you'd call it, without which... Hello?
Clement, challenge.
Supposing,
Oh,
again...
no, I hadn't said it in this level
Always.
well, had I?
Keep
Do I always say
saying
it all the time?
All the time.
Do we just sort of... We suppose that I've said it always, and it just... If I say it once, it counts as a repetition. Is that the idea?
If you repeat suppose, then there's just a repetition, yes.
Yes.
So Clement
but
was
from the
listening.
previous round? Or had I said it in that round as well?
I can't be sure, actually. That's why I'll be quite honest. I was listening for other things. I think he did say, didn't he, Clement?
You think he did, didn't he, Clement? You asked the man who benefits from the point.
Right.
No, we don't...
I know.
Thank you, audience.
Right. Stephen, you still have the subject. And... You see, you're the most fickle audience. 1 minute you wanted Stephen not to have the subject, and now you want him to have it. So the importance of art is with you, Stephen. 20 seconds starting now.
It is my supposition that art has the greatest possible importance in human life. It gives a dimension, a depth, and a spirituality to all our commerce, trade, and doings generally. Without it, it seems to me we are lost, sunk, and desolated forever. Art it is, after all, that makes life beautiful, and without... Hello?
Tony, challenge.
repetition of life.
Oh.
Life, yes.
Yeah, I think I
had
probably
you
just-
mentioned life before, definitely. And there are 2 seconds. You got in cleverly with
Damn
2 seconds to go, Tony. I know it's a tough game. The importance of art with you, Tony, starting now.
Like a bridge over troubled water.
Right. So Tony's moving forward rapidly with that extra point, as well as helped, of course. So he's now equal in second place with Clement Freud. They're both 2 points behind Stephen Fry and 3 or 4 points ahead of Julian Clary. And Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject is dog days. Tell us something about dog days in this game, starting now.
If it's raining cats and dogs and a dog falls on your head, the chances are you'll be knocked unconscious and into a daze, which you could argue is something of a dog daze, if you were a pedant. The trouble is you'd have to talk for quite some time afterwards on that subject within just a minute if you were playing that game when you brought it up, which is, interestingly, what's just happened to me. Now, dog days should be introduced on Thursdays, in my view. We should all get together with our dogs, chat to them, bond in any way we can, because, to be honest, human beings don't work hard enough in this general area. And what better day of the week to do it? The day between Wednesday and...
Julian challenged.
We had 2 days.
Yeah.
Yes, right, we did indeed, Julian. So you're in there on dog days. What's the matter? Janet's telling me something. What's that, love? Oh, yes, dog days. But he did say dogs twice, and it's dog days on the card.
And he said day, not
He said
days.
day as a singular, he said
He
twice.
said day as a singular. Sorry, Janet. He said
And
day
he's
as a
not
singular.
wearing a tie.
Yes.
So it's a correct challenge anyway, Julian. 21 seconds, dog days, starting now.
I've got a delightful dog called Valerie, who you may have seen on Celebrity Challenge programme that I did recently. So every day for me is a dog day, which is not a negative...
Tony challenged.
Well, he's done exactly what he buzzed me for.
No, he hasn't. He said dog, which is singular, which is on the card. You said day as singular. It should have been days.
It should have been days.
He said day twice. That's what I'm buzzing him for.
Shall we listen to the
day.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh, well, in that case, you're right.
Let's listen to the...
Well done.
Stephen,
Janix, that's a point to Tony.
would you like to take over? I'm quite happy to do IQ for you.
Go on.
Right. No, I'm afraid he's got you on the same thing that you got him on. Dog days is the subject. Tony, 11 seconds. Dog days starting now.
Dog Days Afternoon was not a film, but I couldn't say the correct title or I would have...
Clement challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid we call that hesitation. A stumble. 6 seconds. Clement, dog days starting now.
If you're an aficionado of greyhound racing, Wembley, Wimbledon, Hendon, Slough...
That small list kept him going to the whistle and an extra point, and therefore he's increased his lead. He's 3 ahead of Stephen Fry now and 4 or 5 ahead of Tony Hawks. And Julian, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is the nation's favourite. Tell us something about that subject in this game starting now.
The nation's favourite TV star of the moment is probably Jordan, who I had the pleasure of meeting recently at a club called China White. I took her back to my place and gave her a good going over, and then I chucked her out. The nation's favourite food is probably chips, and the nation's favourite sexual position is over the breakfast bar, apart from in Wales, where it's over the paddock gate.
Tony challenged.
I thought I'd better stop him before we come off the air in Wales. No, there was a repetition of over.
Yes, he did go over a bit too much.
Yes.
You're telling me?
I think he's gone over the top, actually,
Yes.
but we hope it's sustainable, and people, a lot of nice-minded people won't understand what he was talking about, and but nobody really is like that nowadays, are they? Right, you all knew, didn't you? Right. Tony, 38 seconds, the nation's favourite starting now.
Take yourself back to the 70s. Norwich, a magnificent television show called Sale of the Century. Who is the nation's favourite? None other than the assistant to Nicholas Parsons, who presented that show. How she was adored up and down this land as she strutted around in rather a loose-fitting top, if I remember rightly. I was only a wee thing at the time. Mind you, I've grown, but that's something else we don't need to go into. Now, Nicholas, who I've said...
Ah, you are sweet to do that. Oh, what they mentioned Nicholas. Clement, yes.
Repetition of Nicholas.
Yes, I know, isn't it? So, Clement, 9 seconds, the nation's favourite starting now.
I think usually politicians like Attlee, Churchill, but not always. Rugby, footballers, cricketers.
Right, so I've just got a message to say we're moving into the final round. Let me give you the score as we do so. Clement Freud, with that extra point, I should say, at the end of the round, has gone forward. He's 4 ahead of Stephen Fry and 5 ahead of Tony Hawks and even more ahead of Julian Clary. And Stephen, it's your turn to begin, and the subject, very apt for the time of which we're recording this, Valentine's Day. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
On 2122 North Clark Street in the south side of Chicago on the 14th of February, St. Valentine's Day, there was a famous massacre enacted by Al Capone, the great bootlegger and...
Tony challenge.
I think it was a hesitation.
I think
I think it probably was.
I think it was, yes. 50 seconds for you, Tony, on Valentine's Day, starting now.
Valentine, the patron saint of florists and restaurateurs. Because let's face it, you have to go out on those days. You cannot remain at home with your loved one, or she, or indeed he.
Stephen.
Well, there was a sort of mess, which I suppose you'd call hesitation.
If he can have you for a hesitation, a similar one comes up for him. And Stephen, you have 35 seconds. The subject is Valentine's Day, and you start now.
The hagiographies, or Fox's Books of Martyrs as well, only list 3 saints called Valentine. They were different, they were all martyred.
Tony challenged.
What does scald mean?
scald.
No, it was an elision of words. I mean, it's the thing the French indulge in, and we don't usually do it, but I'll let him have it for the benefit of the doubt on this occasion, and say 26 seconds, Valentine's Day, with you, Stephen, starting now.
But it's generally considered that because around the time of the middle of the second month of the year, birds pair off. And that's where Chaucer, in his great book, The Parliament of Fowls, described this time as one for lovers, for romance, which we have, since the Middle Ages, associated with those who adore each other in the exchange of tokens and cards and gifts and things of that nature. However, I don't subscribe to this great hallmark resurrection of the holiday, if you can call it that, which of course you can't.
So Stephen Fry, with that final surge, kept going till the whistle went and gained an extra point for doing so with other points in the run. Let me give you the final situation. Julian Clary, who always gives incredible value on the show, finished only just in fourth place. A very, very strong fourth place. Tony Hawks, who's always great as well, was very close to the leaders, and he was in third place. And what has happened, I think, a very fair result, because they both contributed so much. Clement Freud and Stephen Fry have finished up equal, so let's say they are the winners this week. Right, thank you. Thank you. It only remains for me to say thank you to these four fine players of the game, Stephen Fry, Julian Clary, Tony Hawks and Clement Freud. Also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helped me keep the score. She's blown her whistle with great delicacy. And we thank our producer, Chris Neal, and we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game. And we're also indebted to this lovely audience here in the Old Vic Theatre down in the Waterloo area of London, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. They seem to have enjoyed themselves. We've enjoyed ourselves. So from the audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the panel, Andy Bart, thank you. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only those who hear us on Radio 4, the internet, and also, of course, round the world on the World Service. We welcome all those, and we welcome to the show this week four exciting, individual, and talented players of the game. And seated on my left, I have two of them here who are reacting to each other, and that is Graham Norton and Ross Noble. And seated on my right, it's Linda Smith and Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all four of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Warwick Arts Centre, which is on the campus of the University of Warwick, which is near Coventry. And we have a lovely Warwickshire audience, or a West Midland audience, ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show with Linda Smith. Linda, I can't believe it. Guess what the first subject is? Warwick Castle.
You didn't give me very long to guess, did you?
60 seconds as usual to talk on it, starting now.
Warwick Castle, like most things pertaining to Warwick, for example the university, is situated conveniently in Gloucestershire, which makes that place very handy for a day trip. It's a beautiful place, I am told, largely by Clement Freud. A castle of...
Ross Jones.
Hesitation.
Yes, that was a hesitation. Ross?
Do you think?
Yes, definitely. Yes. And so we've decided it was hesitation, Linda. So Ross is a correct challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 43 seconds available. Warwick Castle starting now.
Warwick Castle was built by the Normans, Wisdom and Collier. They were the two. A lot of people think it goes a lot further back than that, but no, you'd be very, very wrong. You should have...
Oh, just a minute.
You'd be very, very, very wrong.
Yes, right. Graham, you got in first on the very, very. So you take over the subject, having got a point for a correct challenge. 32 seconds. Warwick Castle starting now.
Warwick Castle was originally built in 1652, and...
Clement challenge.
Wasn't.
Oh, come on, it was worth a guess.
It wasn't.
Like I'd know.
What year was it built, Clement?
Oh, sort of 13th century.
Yes, it's right. That is sufficient for the challenge, Clement. You have the subject, you have the point, you have Warwick Castle, and 29 seconds starting now.
I think perhaps the most notable resident of Warwick Castle was John Neville, who was whatever number Earl of Warwick, who was known as the Kingmaker, and who died in Barnet, which I always thought was rather down market.
Ross challenge.
Bit of a hesitation
Well,
there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Hesitation.
Massive hesitation.
Well, dying in Barnet is...
So, Ross, a correct challenge, a point to you. And 13 seconds, Warwick Castle starting now.
Warwick Castle was Roy Castle's brother, and when he was not off filming Record Breakers with Cheryl Baker, he was spending his time wancing about the...
Graham challenged.
Wancing? That's not a word, is it?
It's a specific thing that happens in the Warwick area. It's an ancient Warwick tradition.
I'm a fool.
It's like wandering and waltzing combined. Wancing.
Graham, he was deviating from language as we understand it. And so you had 3 seconds to go on Warwick Castle starting now.
In the 13th century, this beautiful building was first created.
So, whoever is speaking in this game, when the whistle goes, gains an extra point. On this occasion was Graham Norton, so he's in the lead at the end of the first round. And Ross, will you take the next round? The subject is novel ideas. You've got many in your head, but tell us something about them in this game starting now.
Barbara Cartland had many novel ideas, but not for books. Oh, no. She actually thought about opening a theme park called Barbara's Cartland, which was a place you could go to where the old novelist would be sitting there on a horse-drawn vehicle, and she would run about the place pulling you. Pull, lads, pull like a fool!
Yes, Clement, you challenge.
Reputation of Barbara. I didn't want to come in too soon.
Yes, but
I want him to go on for a bit.
Yes. So you came in later. Correct challenge, Clement. 38 seconds. Novel ideas starting now.
I keep getting ideas for novel, like this 1/8 Japanese.
Linda, challenge. Yes, I like this I get ideas for a novel like this
Yes, that was
Oh, that's right, yes, but you
idea
look,
for the
you have that as a sort of...
that was the novel.
A good answer, but I'm not going to accept it, Clement. So, Linda, you've got in... He was wriggling out of it, come on. He's clever at the game, he's clever at his different ploys and playing the game. And 31 seconds for you, Linda. Novel ideas starting now.
Novel Ideas is a lovely catalogue that comes through the door with all kinds of items to buy. It will say things like, at last an end to no special table for your jigsaw misery. And I'm drawn in and think, yes, how have I lived without that item up until now? A special thing to catch spiders. Surely I need to purchase this immediately, or my life is worthless, and I might as well die now in horrible agony, because it is so...
Oh, Linda, you had us all in agony and the audience on the edge of their seats because you actually gathered pace as you went along. And Graham, it's your turn to begin. The subject, Concorde. And would you tell us something about our Concorde? 60 seconds starting now.
I actually travelled on Concorde, and in my mind, it was like a sort of flying National Express bus. It was no great shakes, but my God, it was full of rich people. They came around before takeoff and said, would you like a glass of champagne? To which the answer is, yes, please, a bucket. This thing is costing me a fortune. The lady behind me was offered the same drink. She asked, are you still serving the Tattinger?
Ross, challenge.
Repetition of asked.
Yes.
Oh, how
I'm
mean.
so sorry.
Little, tiny, I'll get you.
It's not me. You've got the cash to fly on Concorde. It's not me.
You've flown on Concorde. So, Ross, correct challenge. Ask. 33 seconds are available. Concorde starting now.
The trouble with Concorde is it goes so quickly that all the makeup that the stewardesses wear flies off and can land on anyone in their seats, and you will think that there's somebody else, a little bit like Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible film. You might be sat there chatting one moment.
Graham challenge.
Repetition of might.
Yes. Yeah, tough challenge, but you did say might be, and you might be sitting there, right?
Yeah, and not only that, he was flicking me with money under the table. A big wad to cash.
So, Graham, you've got him with 17 seconds on Concorde starting now.
Oh, sorry.
You're like a naughty boy at school. You weren't concentrating, were you? That's it. You were fooling around with Ross.
I was.
You two naughty boys together at that table. And so, our prefect challenge first, which was Clement Freud.
Oh, right. Okay.
And your challenge, of course, was
Hesitation.
hesitation, of course, because they weren't paying attention, the naughty boys. And
So we're the naughty boys, and he's the prefect.
he's the
I
prefect,
must be
yes.
matron.
And she's...
I sense a head boy joke coming on.
I'm not touching it.
No, it's a mixed educational school, so that's why Linda's there as well.
Ah.
So, right. Clement, you've got 16 seconds. Tell us something about Concorde starting now.
Concord is the capital town of New Hampshire, and one hears quite a lot about it because the state which I've just mentioned, beginning with the letters N and H, is where the first election results, the preliminaries for the presidentship, are...
So Clement Freud, speaking as a whistle went, gained an extra point, is equal to Graham Norton at the end of that round. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject is the third way. Tell us something about the third way, starting now.
The Third Way was a wonderful film with Orson Welles and Tony Blair and Peter Mandelson. And there's a marvellous scene in a Ferris wheel.
Clement challenge.
Two marvellouses, I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
It was a wonderful film.
But it should have been
Marvellous as well.
And that too.
Yes. Clement, 53 seconds. Tell us something about the third way, starting now.
If you have scales and try and determine your weight, you can quite often stand on a particular corner of the platform and weigh very much less than you do if you stand in the centre. Now, the third way for me is the important one because I've worked out exactly what position to take in order to achieve the sort of poundage or kilogrammage.
Linda challenge.
A slight hesitation.
No, it was a definite hesitation. You're all right, Linda. 27 seconds, the third way, starting now.
The Third Way really is a political system dreamed up by some new Labour people. I'm not quite sure what it involves, really. An awful lot of nonsense and nothingness. I feel, really, there's very little to say on the subject as it has so little substance. And I
Ross
said little
challenge.
twice.
Repetition of little.
Yes, you did say a little.
I'm owning up to it.
Right, and 12 seconds for you, Ross. Tell us something about the third way, starting now.
Well, she would advertise stair lifts, and she was in Last of the Summer Wine as well. It was a very popular show. She would go up and down the particular things, and she was...
Right.
I didn't deserve
The third way. When you were speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point, you move forward.
That was so lame. I can't believe I got it.
Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the worst website I know. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
I suspect that the person who thought of that subject also conceived that one would begin with the letter W and repeat that 23rd digit of the alphabet a number of times. I think my novel, I
might be wrong. Perhaps Sir Clement was beginning to discuss his new novel, but I sensed a hesitation.
There was a hesitation, Graham. So you have 45 seconds to tell us something about the worst website I know, starting now.
The worst website I know is hotnakedsirclement.com. Perhaps in the
Ross challenged.
There was a little bit of a pause there, Mr.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'd love to stop him, but...
For everyone's sake, I wish there'd be...
Yes, but I don't think there was. So, Graham, an incorrect challenge. 31 seconds for you now, still on the worst website I know, starting now.
The worst website I know is something else, then, than I just said.
And Linda challenged.
I think you said 2 thens?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Looked as if he was trying to give it away, and he succeeded. Linda, you came in first. The worst website I know, 26 seconds, starting now.
The worst website I know is in my loft. It's full of webs. The spiders just go mad, weaving those webs all...
Ross challenged.
Repetition of webs.
Yes.
I thought I could say, oh no.
No, it's website. Just to explain to the listeners, you can repeat the subject on the card or any one of the subjects in the phrase, but in this case, webs is not there. And Ross, you not spotted it first. It's all gone very quiet. I'll get on as quick as I can. And 18 seconds, Ross. The worst website I know, starting now.
The worst website I know is theamish.com. It really is absolutely rubbish because those particular folks aren't allowed to use computers or any form of electricity. In fact, when you log on, they just come to your house and build a barn with all of the information written on...
Ross, I almost tempted to give you a bonus point for that delightful joke you made at the end there. But anyway, we got one for speaking as the whistle went, and it's all very close. In this order, 1 point separating on them, Linda Smith, Clement Freud, Ross Noble, Graham Norton. In that order, ascending. And Linda, your turn to begin. Changing the sheets. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Changing the sheets happens quite a lot when you're a baby because of your incontinence problem. As you get older and become a student, you're not so keen on changing the sheets. In fact, they have to shatter before the average person in a place of learning, which I have just mentioned, does that task. Then you move to a later stage in your life and changing the sheets becomes a pleasant thing, something that you want to do. Then, of course, you become old and we're back to the start where you have to have the sheets changed constantly. Changing the sheets for me brings about a whole new set of sheets. This is a good thing. I like that to happen very often on the bed in which I sleep. I don't like the new sheet.
Clement challenge.
Oh, I'm sorry. There were 2 likes.
There were 2 likes, I'm afraid, yes. And those are the rules. And
2 sheets as well,
two,
if you
yeah.
did but know it.
But that's the irony of the show. She's gone for 48 seconds and hasn't got anything out of it. Clement's come in with 12 seconds to go and got a point, and he might be able to...
Injustice might be a better word than
Yes.
irony.
The irony of the game, I don't know justice. Anyway, Clement, changing the sheets, 12 seconds, starting now.
In order to be able to change sheets, you need more than 1 sheet. This is a simple but I think important message to send to the people of this university in...
So Clement Freud, think as the whistle went, has moved forward. He's now equal with Graham Norton in the lead, and Ross Noble, it's your turn to begin. The subject, dressing for dinner. You tell us something about dressing for dinner in this game, starting now.
Dressing for dinner is a bad idea because you need salad as well. It's wrong to simply just buy a big bottle of dressing and serve that up to your resemblance.
Graham, challenge. Graham, your challenge.
There was a slight hesitation.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely hesitation.
Yes,
Yes, Graham,
yes.
I have to hear what you're saying in case I disagree, so I agree with you on this occasion. 49 seconds. You tell us something about dressing for dinner, starting now.
Dressing for dinner can be important, particularly depending what's being served. If it's a very messy meal, you won't want to wear an entire rubber suit, particularly if you're eating with people, for instance, chimps at a tea party, because they have no manners at all. Have you seen them? You wouldn't invite people round. And they throw...
Ross challenge.
You would if it was Lord Greystoke.
Yes.
What is your challenge within the rules?
There
of
is
just a
no
minute?
challenge. I just like monkeys.
You could have had him for hesitation, but it's too late now. Sorry, right. 30 seconds. Dressing for dinner. Still with you, Graham, starting now.
Dressing for dinner is something that people don't do as much now as they used to.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of people.
People, you said of people,
Very right.
yes. Yes. Right, Clement, you listened well. 28 seconds. Dressing for dinner, starting now.
My favourite proposition used to be people saying to me, will you come upstairs and make love to me? And now I have to reply one or the other. Now, the important thing about dressing for dinner is that unless you undress...
Ross challenged.
Bit of a hesitation.
I think there's definite hesitation. I think he was almost retiring on his laurels of the laugh he got for that remark. Ross,
I can't get the image out of my head.
Right, 9 seconds for you on dressing for dinner, starting now.
I often dress for dinner at a local fancy dress shop. I go in there, a little bit like Mr. Ben from the popular TV series, and get myself...
So it's all very close. Ross Noble speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward. He's equal with Clement Freud, 1 point behind our leader, Graham Norton, and Linda Smith is trailing just a little bit behind them. And Graham Norton, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is what I love about the West Midlands. Tell us something about the subject in this game, starting now.
What I love about the West Midlands is the way that you've cleverly left the centre of your city uncluttered by anything that might contain its name, such as your university, art centre, castle, or any point of interest at all. Is there anything in Warwick? I looked, I couldn't find anything. Now I've said anything twice.
And Clement was the first to buzz. Right, he'll have anything. 33 seconds for you, Clement. What I love about the West Midlands, starting now.
What I love about the West Midlands is that wherever you are in the West Midlands, you're...
Ross, you challenged.
Bit of a hesitation.
No hesitation, I noticed.
No, I buzzed for deviation.
Well, it's too late now.
I didn't buzz. I was loving it.
Clement, the challenge that came in first, which was the first light to come on in front of me, was Ross's. It's an incorrect challenge, so you've still got the subject. 28 seconds. What I love about the West Midlands, starting now.
Wherever you may be, you're not terribly far away from Warwick Racecourse. Now, this is a track of which I'm incredibly fond, where I shall go tomorrow, and, of course, when I say the following day, it is not necessary.
Linda challenged.
Of course. Race course, of course.
No, race course is one.
No. Of course.
Yes.
And then this is a course.
It's like a mad genius at the end.
She did say that, right, of course, but no, it wasn't part of race course. Right, Linda, you've got in which you want on what I love about the West Midlands. 14 seconds, starting now.
What I love about the West Midlands is the way it's in the West Midlands. You just know where to find it. The West Midlands. It's in the West Midlands.
Ross challenged.
It's in. Repetition of it's in.
It's in the West Midlands, in the West Midlands. Yes, it's a tough one, but it's correct, Ross. So you've got in there with 4 seconds on what I love about the West Midlands, starting now.
The Safari Park. I have visited there on many an occasion. There was a sign up.
So they all got points in the round. Ross got one for speaking as the whistle went as well, and he's now equal in the lead with Clement Freud, who happens to be in the next round. Clement, the subject now is rosemary. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
John Cleese wrote a cookbook in which he had an interesting recipe for lamb with basil and rosemary. And what you did was you went to the butcher and bought a joint of small sheep and phoned up Basil and Rosemary and asked them to come and have dinner with you. I have said Basil twice now.
Graham, you challenged first.
I was going to point out the Basil thing too.
Yes, so repetition of Basil, and 40 seconds for you on Rosemary, starting now.
Rosemary Ford, where is she now?
Clement Freud challenged.
Don't know.
All right, Clement, you work hard for your bonus points. Have one for that. The audience applauded. They liked it. And Graham, you have an interruption, and therefore you have a point. And 35 seconds. Rosemary, starting now.
Rosemary Clooney. I wonder in what location she is residing at this moment. Is she doing ironing? Perhaps she's just skipping down the stairs. Oh, look out, there's a small terrier. Oh, she's fallen. But we can't be sure, can we? No, that's indeed a fact to be...
Ross, we challenge.
That was a bit of a hesitation.
Bit of a hesitation. It was rubbish as well, I think. So, 14 seconds, Ross. You tell us something about rosemary starting now.
There's an old Geordie folk song about rosemary, and it goes a little bit like this. Rosemary, how are you? Are you okay? Yes, I'm not too shabby, thanks very much. Unfortunately, I have trouble with my knees.
So when are you going to record that, Ross?
It's going to be a Christmas single.
So anyway, you were speaking as a whistle when you move forward. You're now in the lead, just one ahead of Graham Norton and Clement Freud, equal in the second place. Linda just behind them. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject, the middle of the road. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The middle of the road is a very dangerous to... Oh,
Graham?
Hesitation.
Yes, there was,
I
unfortunately.
should say.
Tell us something about the middle of the road, starting now.
The middle of the road is a description of a sort of music, and I think that's because you would like the people who sing it to stand there and have large trucks plough into them. Oh, how we'd laugh. I'm not sure if anyone performs middle-of-the-road tunes anymore. Perhaps they do in small pubs in the centre of Warwick. But we'll never know, because nobody goes there. Why would there? There's nothing. I noticed as I made my way.
Ross challenge.
There was a repetition of there.
Yeah.
And a hesitation.
Well, which do you want?
I'll have whatever's right.
It was both, so you can have it right. 11 seconds, Ross, on the middle of the road, starting now.
The middle of the road is a very crucial place for chickens, because that's where you find out the outcome of many jokes. What's going to happen? Will it make it to the other side, or will there be no humour found in these hills?
Clement challenge.
To Will's
Will.
repetition.
Yep.
Oh, tough one, but correct, Clement. And you've got him with 1 second to go. Ooh, middle of the road, starting now.
The middle of the road.
So, we're moving into the last round, alas. Oh. Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. So, hope there wasn't agony. Anyways,
Another round.
oh, God. Right, we're going into the final round, so I'm sure you'd like to know the situation with the points before we do that, because some people get very tense about this.
Oh, don't bother about the points.
Well, Linda, no, you haven't got as many as the others, but you're doing very well, darling. But you're unfortunately in fourth place, that's all. Graham Norton is in third place, but he's behind our joint leaders, Ross Noble and Clement Freud. And Graham's only 1 point behind. Oh, it's tense, exciting, isn't it? Oh, couldn't care less. Right, let's get moving. Ross, your turn to begin, so the final round starts with you, and the subject is yin and yang, starting now.
Yin and Yang were a Chinese Cheech and Chong impersonator duo that used to perform all of their classic sketches, but in a Chinese-style voice. That's right. There's a big difference between the two. That's right. It's a...
Graham's challenge.
Repetition of that's right.
You did say that's right twice. Yes, yep. And there we are. The tension's there, trying to keep going. 44 seconds with you, Graham, on yin and yang, starting now.
Yin and yang. Oh, let me commence.
Ross challenge.
There was a little bit of a hesitation.
Yeah, he just didn't come in, did he? Yeah. I don't know, he's yin
I
and
didn't
yang.
notice it myself.
You did, yes. Your yin and the yang just disappeared. Ross, it's back with you with another point, and yin and yang starting now.
Whenever Batman would fight somebody from an oriental place, that is what would come up on the screen. Yin, yang, rather than kapow, biff, kaplunk, which is one of the things that would appear whenever he would swap.
Linda challenge.
Who appears.
Come up on... No, he said come up on the screen, that's right, and appear, right? And so, Linda, you've got in 25 seconds to go. You tell us something about yin and yang, starting now.
Yin and Yang were in fact a Zen Buddhist comedy act. They were shite and were very used to the sound of one hand clapping. This made their philosophy of life very helpful to them in those times of trouble. I've never really understood what yin and yang actually mean. It's some kind of mystical thing that many...
Clement Freud challenge.
We've had a thing before.
Yes, we did have a thing.
From me?
Yes.
Yep.
So, Clement, you've got in with only 1 second to go. Gosh, he's done it again. 1 second to go on yin and yang, Clement, starting now.
Yang and yin.
So, let me tell you the situation, as we've no more time to play. Just a minute. Linda Smith, who gave such wonderful contribution, but alas, finished in 4th place. But she was behind Ross Noble, Graham Norton, and Clement Freud, who all finished up equal in 1st place. Wasn't that a fair decision? Round of applause for all of them. So we've no more time to play. Just a minute. It only remains me to say thank you to these 4 delightful players of the game. Graham Norton, Ross Noble, Linda Smith, and Clement Freud. I also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helped me keep the score, and she's blown a whistle with such aplomb throughout. We also thank our producer, director, that is Chris Neal. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this delightful game, and we are most indebted for this delightful audience in the West Midlands who've come here to the Warwick Arts Centre on the campus of the University of Warwick. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and our panel, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, and also to welcome to the show 4 exciting guests who have played the game many times before. And it's always a pleasure to welcome back that engaging and delightful comedian, Graham Norton, the brilliant stand-up comedian who's filled theatres throughout the country, including the Edinburgh Festival, and that is Ross Noble, that charming and clever comedian, Linda Smith, and also the clever and witty Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Warwick Arts Centre, which is on the campus of the University of Warwick, and we have a highly excited audience. We've assembled here from all corners of the West Midlands, ready to cheer us on our way. And Graham, your turn to begin. The subject, swashbuckling. Something which I associate you with, I'm sure. Will you swashbuckle a bit or talk about the subject starting now?
Sometimes, usually when I'm a little drunk, I do get my sword out and wave it around. But I don't think we could really call it swashbuckling. I leave that to pirates. Ooh, they're fascinating men. Obviously, they don't have pockets in their big trousers. Else why would they have hankies on their head?
Ross, my big challenge.
I thought there was a little bit of hesitation there, a little bit of
No, I think he was stumbling through his words, but they were sufficiently coherent not to be interpreted as hesitation. So benefit of the doubt to you, Graham, and you keep another point in the subject, and there are 41 seconds starting now.
Swashbuckling. Gosh, I know so much about it. I can't wait to get started. Up until now, it's really been a preamble. Pirates see...
Ross. Yes.
I'm a genius.
What's the... I know
well,
what
he was
it is.
going to say pirates, and then he went, and then he went...
Well, he did say pirates before.
He did say pirates,
I
yes.
know,
But then he...
But I said piracy.
He went pirates...
the buzzer went through the piracy. Right. Cleverly done. This is what they do. Had little tricks to trip each other up. So, Graham, you have another point. Incorrect challenge, and 32 seconds available. Swashbuckling, starting now.
As I'm sure you're aware, I'm talking on the subject of swashbuckling. And I couldn't be more excited. Ooh, the vision of ropes and the buckles being swashed. Oh, sweet Lord in heaven, what does it mean?
Clement challenged.
I thought that was hesitation.
There was a hesitation, yes. So, Clement, you have the subject now. You have a point for a correct challenge. You have 19 seconds. Tell us something about swashbuckling, starting now.
Swashbuckling is usually perpetrated by people who are younger than I am. Nevertheless, there is a sort of seniority in the swashbuckling business. And I have friends aged 18, 27, 31, and 39 who have swashbuckled with the best of them.
Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so. Linda, your turn to begin. The subject, chores. Tell us something about chores in this game, starting now.
Chores is a name we give to rather dreary and unpopular drugs.
The look
Not
on...
my grandchildren.
Right. I think your look on your face got the laugh there, Linda. But Graham, what was your challenge?
I'm sensing deviation of a profound and worrying nature.
Well, that's another type of challenge, yes. But of course, she repeated it. But 56 seconds. You tell us something about chores, Graham, starting now.
Many years ago, and this is a little-known fact, can't wait for my autobiography to come out.
Linda.
Gosh, that's a hard word.
Yes.
Perhaps a touch of hesitation.
Yeah, we interpret that stumble as hesitation. Linda, you have the subject back. You have chores. You have 50 seconds, starting now.
Chores can involve things like washing the floor, unblocking drains, and leading the Tory party. All those sort of things you'd rather not do because they're rather boring.
Clement challenge.
Two rathers.
There were two rathers, I'm afraid. Yes, Linda. Yeah. So you have 30 seconds.
I noticed that. I didn't like to say.
Rather difficult when you were talking about other things too. 37 seconds are available for chores with you, Clement, starting now.
Jaws is the title of a Steven Spielberg film pronounced by a Czechoslovakian. I have...
Ross challenged.
Said all I wanted to say.
So, Ross.
He just stopped, didn't
He just stopped. That's right, yes. I think he felt he'd been such a... Anyway, carry on. You have a correct challenge, Ross. You have 29 seconds. You tell us something about chores starting now.
One thing I like to do is to go into pubs and say, have you done your chores? And the barmaid goes, what chores? And I'll say, I'll have a pint of lager, please. And then that way I'm able to get free drinks. Of course, that's a stupid thing to do, as I don't actually drink. And I'm laughed out. Drinking
Linda
drinks,
challenge.
come on.
Yes. You don't actually drink
I
and
walked
say...
straight into your trap.
Yeah.
Drinking drinks.
I know, there we are. They're all doing it now. Drink and drinks, plurals and singulars. So, Ross, an incorrect challenge, 13 seconds. Chores starting now.
I have many chimneys in my house and they need cleaning on a regular basis, and I often get a small child to come round, and one of his chores is to go up that particular place for suit together, and he will...
Right, so Ross Noble, speaking as a whistle, gained an extra point, and for those interested in points, they're all three equal in second place behind Graham Norton, who's in the lead. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is the best thing to do with an egg. There's tremendous scope there. And knowing your fertile mind, I'm sure you'll go with it for 60 seconds, starting now.
The best thing to do with an egg is not let it sit on a wall. That's where problems arise. The trouble is, you have to pay people to guard it, mainly king's men and horses as well. I mean, obviously, those blokes that are involved are useful, but the actual creatures themselves don't tend to lend themselves particularly well to...
Linda challenge.
To themselves.
To themselves. So, Linda, you have a subject. You have 40 seconds. It's the best thing to do with an egg, starting now.
The best thing to do with an egg depends on what kind of egg it is. If it's a pterodactyl egg, for example, the best thing to do is tend it, look after it until that egg hatches, and then you'll have a baby pterodactyl.
Clement challenge.
I thought you might not notice pterodactyl twice. It seems a bit mean, a little word like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, they all pressed their buzzers, but Clemens came in first, and so you have the subject, Clement. 25 seconds available. The best thing to do with an egg, starting now.
The best thing to do with an egg is put it back, whence it came. This is messy and painful, and causes some alarm to the animal, whence it emerged. But seriously, what to do with an egg?
Linda challenge.
Not if it came from Tesco's. That would be quite a simple matter.
I don't get your logic. If it came from...
Well, putting
Tesco.
it back where it came from.
No, he was talking about putting it back into the animal. If it came from Tesco's, it'd be rather difficult.
I wish
to
I'd
go
never
find a
mentioned
farm.
it.
I thought you were going to have him for something else, but it's too late now. Right, so Clement, it was an incorrect challenge, and there are 9 seconds. The best thing to do with an egg starting now.
The best thing to do with an egg if you want to buy one is to go to Safeway, Tesco's, Sainsbury's.
Graham challenge.
Well, this can't be the best thing to do with an egg.
Yeah.
No, because you just told us the best thing to do with an egg, and I'd shove it back in the thing.
No.
So this is deviation. This is another good thing to do with an egg, but it can't be the best.
Graham, we are all a mass of contradictions.
Yes, but
You've made me think tonight, Linda. Thanks.
it's one of those difficult decisions, Graham, but I see your logic. He has said, in Clement's mind, the best thing to do with egg was to shove it back up the hen's, and now he's saying the best thing is to go to... He didn't establish that. He said another thing to do with it. So he has deviated from he originally said.
Yeah.
So I will give you the benefit of the doubt, and I will try and arrest the balance sometime in Clement's favour, but you have the benefit this time. With 4 seconds to go, best thing to do with an egg starting now.
The best...
And Clement challenge.
Why don't I get the benefit of the doubt now?
All you get, Clement, is a point, because the audience enjoyed your interruption. But as Graham was interrupted, he gets another point and keeps the subject with 3 seconds on the best thing to do with an egg, starting now.
The best thing to do with an egg is full of contradictions. People don't quite know what...
So Graham Horn was again speaking as the whistle went, and with that extra point has increased his lead. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Balti. Tell us something about Balti in this game, starting now.
I wish this game were called Just a Second, because Balti is Hindi for bucket.
Ross, you challenge.
That was the most amazing pause I've ever heard ever.
He made his point, he waited for his reaction, he got it, and decided to retire on his laurels.
He was like a sultan giving forth information.
Well, he looks a bit like a sultan on occasions, but anyway, he's the doyen of this show, isn't he? And he's been with us since it started, and he's retired on his laurels there. He left it to you. You got in first. Balti is the subject. 53 seconds starting now.
Balti is best eaten with a nan. If she's not available, then get another elderly relative. Of course, don't mix them up. The last thing you want is to get an old lady and dip her into that hot, spicy thing. Oh, licking off the food is terrible, especially from all the little wrinkles around her eyes there. It's quite nice because you can put papadoms in the top of her head like that and it'll hold it nice and securely. Unfortunately, the rollers can dispense a little bit of fluid from the top of the head, which can put you off your meal. The waiters tend to get a little bit annoyed as well when you start dragging OAPs into the place, backing up the special bus, putting the hydraulic lift down and rolling them through. Can I have a coma for Mr. Wilkinson? No, he doesn't like that particular dish. No. He very much enjoys some...
So, Ross, you picked it up quite soon after it started, and so you went for about 50 seconds on that, which was pretty good, and the audience really enjoyed it. Round of applause showed it. And they were very generous, because there was a no-no at the end. If they got in there, that would have been really, really unfair, wouldn't it? Because you'd have had 2 seconds, and they'd have got 2 points. Anyway, I don't know. That was utterly boring, wasn't it? I'm so sorry.
At least you're honest.
I know. Well, I think this audience will let you know when you're winning or losing, won't they? Right. So, Graham, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is My Daily Constitutional, and you have, as always, 60 seconds starting now.
My daily constitutional is a walk. But before I do it, I like to dress up as a pirate. Have I told you about my interest in those men? Yes, I have big brown boots, almost to my waist. They're like a sort of leathery wader. And then, obviously, I check my pockets. I don't have any. Curses. The pocket, Oh, no, I heard...
Clement, you challenge.
Repetition of pocket.
Yes, there was the pockets there.
No, I think I said pockets and pocket.
Nope.
It made no sense, but
You actually did, but you did actually say pockets. The buzzer came on the pocket, but I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Clement on this occasion. No, that's only fair.
Who cares about fair?
Clement, 40 seconds. Tell us something about My Daily Constitutional, starting now.
We no longer have a daily, we used to, but we now have a Portuguese woman who comes 3 days a week. Her name is Maria. And I'm not sure about her constitution, but I think...
Linda, you challenge first.
Yeah, he really wasn't sure about her constitution, was he?
No, she wasn't, so he paused, and you got in first. 26 seconds. Tell us something about my daily constitutional, starting now.
My daily constitutional will be a lot more pleasant if it wasn't for cyclists on the pavement. These people drive me mad. Nearly always grown men. I stand and scream after them, "Why don't you get a tricycle with stabilisers on, you big wuss? You shouldn't be on this..."
Ross, challenge.
Can a tricycle have stabilisers?
Very good point. No, because the tricycles are...
It can if your child is very, very nervous.
Incredibly simple.
Oh, very simple. Or just perhaps the overprotective
Ross's
parent.
logic is right. Because the stabilisers, if it's a two-wheeler, are the extra wheels to keep it stable. So a three-wheeler tricycle is stable already.
I think if we start bringing logic in at this stage of the game, it's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. But I have to use some kind of logic sometimes when interpreting the challenges. So,
Is this new?
Well, he sits back and waits for it all the time, doesn't it? I say those lines for you, Clement, so you can come back with those put-downs and you enjoy it. And so do the audience, which is part of the show. Ross, it's your turn, and you have my daily constitutional. You have 9 seconds starting now.
My daily constitutional is always ruined by the sight of Graham Norton on a stabilised tricycle dressed as a pirate.
Graham,
You
challenge.
can't have stabilised tricycles. That's madness.
So, Graham, you have another point, and you had 3 seconds on my daily constitutional starting now.
My daily constitutional is once around the deck and then below for...
So, Graham Norton was again speaking as a whistle when gained the extra point. He's got quite a strong lead. He's ahead of Clement, Freud, Ross Noble and Linda Smith in that order. Only 1 point separates the other three. Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is two left feet, which is an expression we'd like you to talk about. 60 seconds starting now.
2 left feet is absolutely fine, provided you have 2 right feet as well. The embarrassment of 2 left feet is when you are right-footed or right-handed.
Ross challenged.
Repetition of right.
2 rights, yes.
Is hyphenated, right-footed, right-handed.
We've had this hyphenated discussion over the last 35 years. And as we deal in the world of sound, I'm not allowing hyphens anymore. Well, I haven't allowed it for years. Because if the word is correct, if it's joined up word, with all one word, then we allow it, but a hyphenated word, no. 2 rights. It's your, Ross, your call. 48 seconds, 2 left feet, starting now.
2 Left Feet is the sequel to the film My Left Foot with Daniel Day-Lewis. It really isn't as good as the original, quite frankly. I was most disappointed when I went to the cinema. Rather than being a touching story about a young boy, quite frankly, it was just that.
Graham challenge.
I feel bad. It was frankly twice.
Yes, there was 2 Franklies, right. Graham, 33 seconds, tell us something about 2 left feet, starting now.
2 left feet are fine, except perhaps for the soldier who tends to march in circles. This doesn't go very well in battle, you know, but mind you, you'd even like corn circle, perhaps.
Linda challenge.
I don't really know why.
You don't know why
I had
challenge.
stopped.
I think was somebody else talking as well as Graham?
No, there was, even the audience were quiet too.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I was just mumbling. Yes, you could.
Oh, were you? Oh, that might have been it.
Yes,
Perhaps I
yeah.
thought it was more than one person.
Yes, it could be. Yes.
No, I think you're the other side of the stage from Graham. I think you quite hear him. He was keeping going.
Was he?
He might have dropped his voice slightly, as he does, you know. He does go up and down, you know, he modulates it rather dramatically.
Yeah.
It's part of his technique for humour and drama.
Yes.
And...
Sorry, Graham, I tried, but he's not buying it.
But Graham, actually, no, you did keep going. So you have 21...
You might be hearing voices.
No, I don't think so. I have put tinfoil in my shoes. Usually does the trick.
21 seconds for you, Graham, on 2 left feet, starting now.
2 left feet. Oh, it's a medical miracle and a shopping disaster.
Clement challenge. Yes?
There was an
There was a hesitation there, yes. You did draw a long breath than usual, and yes, you did. You looked...
See, I thought the last time I did hesitate, but this time...
No, this time you did hesitate. No. I have to explain to our listeners, they look at me to try and bluff me out of it. No, Graham, your look, as engaging as it is, I give the benefit of the doubt to Clement. It was a hesitation. 15 seconds, Clement. 2 left feet starting now.
With 2 left feet, you have 10 left toes and a double handful of left toenails. It is particularly important to remember that because 2 left feet is simply a wrong way.
Clement Freud speaking as the whistle when gained the extra point. He's still in second place behind Graham Norton, our leader, but he's ahead of Ross Noble and Linda Smith in that order. And Graham, your turn to begin. The subject now, fiddling. Tell us something about... What in the wide love? They must have strange minds. Fiddling is with you, Graham. 60 seconds starting now.
I have often been accused of fiddling. Sometimes in the middle of the night, my mother would shout, "Graham, if you fiddle anymore, you'll knock the caravan over." And I would say to her, "No! How many times must I tell you? It's not fiddling, it's playing the violin. You're making yourself sound common. Don't you want us to improve?" And so I would take my small case and skip to school, past the hedgerows containing beautiful wildflowers. Look, there's a bird, hi. And then I would get to the gates of the educational establishment and I would fiddle by the bus stop.
A Clement challenge.
Repetition of wood.
Oh, it's quite true. He did say wood more than once.
Yes, harsh but fair.
You haven't won any friends with that challenge, Clement, but it's...
I'm not here to make friends.
But you 1 point, and you've got another one now. Fiddling's with you. 20 seconds starting now.
Fiddling is a small violin, as with duck and goose, duckling, gosling. It is quite simple, a very minute instrument of music. We were very lucky once buying a house, and in the attic we found a Toulouse-Lautrec and a Stradivarius. The sad thing was...
Yes, Clement, yes, you'd like to finish that story, yes.
The sad thing was that few people know what crap violins Toulouse-Lautrec made. Sorry, I mentioned it.
Clement, you were speaking again as the whistle went, so you have moved forward. You're creeping up on our winner, Graham Norton, and you're both...
Our winner.
I might be.
Our leader, so sorry, yes, the leader in the show at the moment, Graham Norton, and you're both a few points ahead of Ross Noble and Linda Smith in that order. We're moving actually into the last round. Oh. And Ross, it's actually your turn to begin, and the subject is Fancy Man. Tell us something about Fancy Man in this game starting now.
Fancy Man was the greatest of all superheroes. Oh, yes. He was able to dance about the place. "Ooh, look at me," he would say, as he ran about all over the town. If somebody was...
Graham challenge.
A sort of hesitation there on the all over the...
Yes, right. All right, Graham, a point to you. 49 seconds. Fancy Man starting now.
Fancy man? No thanks, I just had one. Is something you can sometimes hear in restaurants where they serve a rare fish called man.
Linda challenged.
There was a
Yes,
there was, because after what he said, he completely hesitated,
Yes.
naturally. Right, 38 seconds. Fancy Man with you, Linda, starting now.
I think a fancy man is some kind of exotic pet, like a fancy rat, that people keep and pet, groom, and get them to the peak of...
Graham challenge.
I'm an idiot, because anyway, we didn't repeat pet.
Oh, I might have done.
No.
Yes.
No.
Did I?
Yes, you pet. Yes. You pet it. Ooh, go. Audience call. There's a thin line of crossover.
There's people with pitchforks up the back.
Burn her.
Engaged.
Look at that one with just the one tooth.
That's actually one of Graham's pirate friends.
They're engaged, they're committed, and so are the players. 30 seconds available for you, Graham. Fancy Man starting now.
Sometimes I think I might be accused of being a fancy man because of the ridiculous clothes that I sometimes wear. I think...
Clement challenge.
Two sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it was right.
I trust you completely.
No, you said at the beginning, I sometimes think, and then I sometimes wear. Clement, 23 seconds. You tell us something about Fancy Man starting now.
I can't really tell you a lot about Fancy Men, because I've never done so.
Graham, you challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, definitely,
Yes.
right. So, Graham, you've got him at 16.
Quite reasonably so, I think.
Yes, yes.
16 seconds now on Fancy Man, starting now.
Following on from what Clement said, that means...
Clement, challenge.
I quite fancy Graham.
And judging by the applause, a lot of people in the audience do as well. Clement, obviously it's not a serious challenge, but the audience enjoyed your interruption. We should give you a bonus point for that. But Graham was interrupted, so he gets a point for that. He has 14 seconds. Graham, Fancy Man, starting now.
Fancy Man is some sort of man, I think, that a woman has on the side. A sort of green salad of sex. Am I wrong?
No, but the image you created is lovely. And when you put the dressing on as well, it's even better. So what was your challenge, Clement?
It was a positional deviation.
A positional one?
Be on the side.
No, I think, technically speaking, that's often what it's referred to. Colloquially speaking, people talk about having somebody on the side.
I wasn't objecting to the colloquialism, but to the position. A woman can have a fancy man on her back.
Yes. You don't need to go into graphic detail. We know what you meant, and so did the audience. They understood.
Is that some kind of drug problem? I've got a fancy man on my back.
We're going down paths I don't think we should explore.
I have a monkey on mine.
I think we should leave. The 5 seconds are still available with you, Graham, because it was an incorrect challenge. Fancy Man, starting now.
We all know the old song, Fancy Man, Fancy Man, Fancy Man, Fancy Man, Fancy Man.
No, just don't do that. Janet Staple, who sits next to me, just said to me, I didn't blow the whistle. Everybody clapped because she put the whistle in her mouth and they thought the whistle was going, and he'd gone on with Fancy Man, disobeying the rules and so forth. And Ross did actually challenge with half a second to go. So what was your challenge?
We don't know the old song, Fancy Man, Fancy Man, Fancy Man.
All right. So, Ross, you bring this round to a close with half a second to go on Fancy Man, starting now.
All together now!
So let me give you the final score, which Janet is now going to pass to me because she's kept the numbers for me. And just to give you, well, they were all very close. They all scored points. They all did so well. Linda was just in fourth place, just behind Ross. And Clement was only in second place, just 3 points behind our winner, who is this week Graham Norton. A round of applause for Graham. Right, a popular winner. Thank you very much. I do hope you've enjoyed the show. It only remains for me to say thank you to Graham Norton, Ross Noble, Linda Smith and Clement Freud. Also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helped me keep the score, blown her whistle so delicately, particularly when I told her to do it. And also we thank our producer, Chris Neal, and we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're very grateful to this lovely audience here at the Warwick Arts Centre. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from the panel, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my immense pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 exciting, talented, individual, diverse, highly skilled players of the game. And in no order of preference, seated on my left, we have that two lovely comedians, Julian, Clary, and Tony Hawks. And seated on my right, we have two great talents as well, that is Stephen Fry and Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all four of them? Thank you. And as usual, they're going to display their verbal dexterity, their comic ingenuity as they try and speak on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Old Vic Theatre, a wonderful, renowned, beautiful theatre just in the Waterloo area of London, for those of you abroad who are trying to work out the geography. And we have a wonderful, hyped-up audience. I think they're all Just a Minute fans. They're ready and eager for us to get started. So let's begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject is how to matchmake. You have 60 seconds as usual, and you start now.
This is the sort of question you might be asked of a Bosnian asylum seeker when he actually means, how do you make matches? And ideally you would go to Scandinavia, where most of them seem to come from, because the huge amount of sulfur contained in those Scandinavian countries and the plethora of wood. Go where you will, to Denmark, Sweden.
Stephen John.
A couple of goes there, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Go to South Africa and go where you would.
2 letters. Go.
I know, just 2 little letters.
You wait.
Stephen Fry, yes, a correct challenge, so you get a point for that. You take over the subject. There are 35 seconds available. How to matchmake, starting now.
All kinds of dating agencies nowadays, not just in the press, as there always used to be in certain types of magazine, but also, of course, on the internet, where various people are put together according to their tastes and so on, their hobbies, their habits, their sexual preferences.
Tony Hawks has challenged.
About 4 theirs altogether.
Yes.
Tony. Tony, you have a correct challenge. You have how to matchmake of the subject. 22 seconds available, starting now.
Believe it or not, beautiful as I am, I remain unmarried. Not altogether for the same reasons as Stephen and Julian.
Right, Clement, you challenge first.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed, yes.
I wonder why.
Yes.
Inner soul is hesitating.
14 seconds are still available. Clement, you have the subject back. How to matchmake, starting now.
In Israel, a lot of matchmaking goes on, as it does professionally in Pakistan and India. And people make enormous amounts of money by introducing a male to a female, as a consequence of which...
In this show, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. And on this occasion, it was Clement Freud. And so at the end of the first round, he has 2 points. And who goes next? It is Julian. Julian. Oh, very apt. Old Vic. Tell us something about Old Vic in this game, starting now.
It's not widely known, but when I was a student at Goldsmiths College in South London, I worked here at the Old Vic as an usher, and I had the privilege of being here for Derek Jacobi's 100th performance of Hamlet, co-starring Barbara Jefford. And it was my job on that occasion to go right up there to the gallery and throw roses down at Derek as he stood.
Tony challenged. Oh, yes.
I'm a popular figure for this, yes. It was, unfortunately, he did repeat Derek.
Yes, he did, I'm afraid.
So back to why you're not married, then.
Right, give Julian a bonus point because they enjoyed his remark. Tony, you have the subject. You have 38 seconds. Old Vic, starting now.
I've often wondered if Old Vic is the father of Young Vic. And if so, how do these theatres...
Stephen, you
2
challenge.
ifs. 2 ifs as well.
2 ifs?
Well, look, I take it back. I take it right back.
It's true.
Sorry.
Look,
I thought the game was if someone repeated a word that I didn't realise that...
31 seconds, Stephen. Old Vic, starting now.
There's one in the West Country, of course, known as the Bristol Old Vic, but the one where we're here, it to somebody. Give it back to Tony. Sorry, I was so guilty still. I can't believe it. 2 ifs. I mean,
So,
if a man
Tony,
can't say if
you
twice.
challenge first. 27 seconds, Old Vic, starting now.
I don't know how a building can become the parent of something else, but that obviously would be the case if they're named in such a way. But maybe I've got it completely wrong. I'm a fool and an idiot. And in fact, most people would need...
Clement challenge.
3 ands?
2 ands.
3 ands.
3 ands. Clement, you have Old Vic, and you have 14 seconds, starting now.
The Old Vic is situated in the Waterloo area of London, on the south of the river. And if you went to the underground station, the eponymous one, you would...
Tony challenge.
I'm afraid there was no which we count as a
Yes,
hesitation.
I know. Having found another way not to repeat it and use a lovely word like eponymous, he hesitated, and gosh, you've got him with only 1 second to go. I don't know why you clap. Old Vic, starting now.
Standing as I do.
So Tony Hawks was speaking as a whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so, and he's actually in the lead now. He's 2 points ahead of Clement Freud and 3 ahead of Stephen Fry and 4 of Julian Clary. And Stephen, it's your turn to begin. The subject is pie and mash. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
Looks a mussy. Well, it's a South London dish, often associated with that area of our metropolitan capital at least. And indeed, very often served. Oh dear, I've said often twice.
Yes, Clement. Yes, Clement?
He said often twice.
I know he did. I heard it, but you may have come out with a different challenge, which I may not have agreed with. So, Clement, a correct challenge. So you have 52 seconds, pie and mash, starting now.
Pi is 22 over 7, or 3.142, and mash is a Victorian word for making love or kissing, doing...
Tony challenge.
I'm afraid he hesitated before his lovemaking.
I know. 39 seconds with you, Tony, on pie and mash, starting now.
Look, Sir Lummy, there's nothing I like more than to go down to South London and get myself a bit of pie and mash of an evening, because...
Julian challenge.
Well, if you're allowed to challenge for repeating and, he repeated and.
He did indeed. So you've all had your little...
I don't like that kind of challenge.
I thought that was allowed, but apparently
You've
not.
all had your
Well,
little...
hang on, in this case, pie and mash is in the title.
yes.
True.
Well done, Tony. So you keep the subject. And you have 32 seconds on pie and mash, starting now.
I was doing some magnificent characterization. I shall now continue as an American.
Stephen challenge.
No, he wasn't. That was not by any stretch of the imagination magnificent.
28 seconds available. Oh, no, sorry, no, that was just an interruption. So, Tony, you have another point.
Yeah, for heaven's sake.
I mean, we agree that it was a really ghastly performance, but you were not deviating, hesitating.
Yeah, my ego's in tatters, but I get a point.
I know. Pie and mash is still with you, starting now.
I just love your pie and mash that you serve over here, you English folk. I love coming here.
Julian challenge.
Well, it was unbearable, but also he hesitated.
Yeah, and he also said love
I
twice.
repeated
That's
it.
right,
I did say
yes. 20 seconds for pie and mash with you, Julian, starting now.
I don't think pie and mash is a very nutritious dish. You don't know what's in the pie, for a start. There's all kinds of chewed up nose bits and eyeballs. It's a bit like eating sausages, which I won't put in my mouth, and that's saying something. I think pie and mash is very popular because it's cheap, it's warm, and it fills you up, but don't go there, is my advice.
So, Julian Clary, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point. He's in a strong third place, one behind Clement Freud. Tony Hawks is still in the lead. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. And the subject now is Meals on Wheels. Clement, I'm sure you can go on. It's 60 seconds, starting now.
Meals on Wheels is the name of a gay nightclub, which I...
Tony, you challenge first.
I won't even say what he hesitated before, but he did hesitate.
He did in 54 seconds. Meals on Wheels, Tony, starting now.
Meals on wheels are very difficult to eat because they keep moving about all over the place. I once had one at the beginning of the street, had to chase it all the way up to the far end of the road where I tucked in with my knife and fork with some zeal. It was pie and mash, which made it very pleasing and relevant in some ways to some of the previous rounds we've had in this marvellous competition, which I enjoy very much.
Stephen, challenge.
It's a little bit further back. He said relevant in some ways to some of the... He said some twice.
Some ways, some... He did indeed.
Yes,
Well,
and clearly I was going to say nothing of any interest.
No, I don't.
So, Stephen, you have 31 seconds. Tell us something about Meals on Wheels starting now.
There's a production company caterer called Reels on Wheels, but Meals on Wheels often refers to giving food to deserving people like the elderly, the senior citizens, or whatever we're supposed to call them these days.
Tony, challenge.
I think he should say that less begrudgingly.
Oh, sorry. It's sheer verbal constipation. It was just
Fine,
a struggle of trying to get out a word without repeating.
I withdraw my challenge.
You withdraw your
He
challenge.
gets a point, though.
Oh,
He gets a point because he was interrupted. Hope you get over your constipation.
Thank you.
And you carry on 21 seconds on Meals on Wheels starting now.
Usually prepared somewhere like a school kitchen or similar, and then popped into hot boxes and distributed, as I said earlier.
Clement, challenge.
No, hesitation. As I said.
What was that?
No, I think he was sort of running out of steam. I don't think he quite hesitated, actually, Clement. No, Stephen, you were interrupted, so you have another point for that. 15 seconds, Meals on Wheels starting now.
Wagon wheels, I suppose you could... Oh, I've said I suppose again. I can't help it. What is the matter with me?
Tony, you challenge.
Well, actually, I don't know whether he did, but he certainly did say suppose about 3 times, saying that he said suppose. But,
Tony, you've got Meals on Wheels back with you. 12 seconds starting now.
I think it's a marvellous idea to have Meals on Wheels delivered to people who can't necessarily cook themselves that way.
Clement, challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
You can't cook yourself.
I think
You're weird and German.
you get a bonus point for that, Clement. Tony was interrupted. He gets a point for that. Meals on Wheels is with you, Tony. Only 3 seconds to go. Starting now.
A decrepit man waits at number 64.
So, at the end of that round, Tony Hawks, with points in the round and 1 for speaking as a whistle, has increased his lead. In fact, he's quite way ahead of the other 3 who are almost equal in second place. And Julian, Clary, your turn to begin. And the subject now is charming the birds out of the trees. I'm sure you can do that, but tell us something about the subject in this game, starting now.
To charm the birds out of the trees is not nearly as difficult as you might imagine. You just stand very still with a fistful of trill, and the darling little Tweety birds will come hopping down, pop up along your arm, and munch away with their little beaks, which is 2 littles, but no one's noticed so far. I was once walking along Brighton seafront where I enjoy a blow from the wind, and a seagull swooped down, clutched the ice cream that I'd been having, which was a king cone, I'll have you know, including crushed nuts, and ran off with it. I was outraged. So on that occasion, I couldn't say that I did charm a bird out of the tree, because it was a seagull, and I don't think seagulls hang around in trees, as far as I'm aware. I think they like a nice lamppost, don't they? Or a nice boat, and they tend to eat fish. But this one was obviously very hungry.
Well, Julian, Clary started with the subject, and with some help from the other 3, kept going to the end. Julian, you kept going to the whistle, and you get a point for that. And you get a bonus point because you were not interrupted.
Oh, thank you.
And, Stephen, your turn to begin. Whistleblowers. Yes, tell us something about whistleblowers in this game, starting now.
One of the most ghastly types of person is the school sports referee trotting backwards with a medicine ball under one arm and a clipboard telling you to play on the wing and blowing that blasted whistle at you and talking about offside and other such completely incalculable nonsenses, which never made any sense to me. Always such pompous men, so healthy and so contemptuous of my preference for lying in the long grass with a slim volume of a French poet called Baudelaire. Somehow they decided that this was not the stuff that proper schoolboys should be made of and forced me to stand there as a 3/4 or whatever they call these ghastly things in rugby union football.
Tony, challenge.
I think that was the second ghastly.
Oh,
yes,
was it? Yes.
Ghastly. You had this ghastly
every
master
day.
before, yes. And so, Tony, well, listen, 25 seconds. You tell us something about whistleblowers, starting now.
Nicholas Parsons will only work with the very finest whistleblowers in the country. Janet, who is representing us this evening, is fine and got through rigorous auditions with Mr. Parsons before she was accepted.
Stephen challenge.
Did you say Nicholas Parsons first and then Mr. Parsons?
Yes, Mr. Parsons, he did repeat.
Two Parsons.
I thought I'd got round it cleverly, but no, I was a fool.
So, Stephen, you have the subject back again. There's 11 seconds left, and it's whistleblowers starting now.
And usually these athletic tyrants spend their money on C&A blazers. Actually, that's rather tactless, so do you, Nicholas. But nonetheless, the thing is, whistleblowers also applies to those people who work in some form of industry or government.
So, Stephen Fry, with other points in the round, including one for speaking as a whistle went, has moved forward. He's now just in second place ahead of Julian, Clary and Clement. Freud. Tony Hawks is still in the lead, and Tony, it's also your turn to begin. The subject is doppelganger. Will you tell us something about doppelganger in this game, starting now?
Frankfurt, 1807. Friedrich Doppelganger leaves his house for an audition whistleblowing for Nicholas Parsons. It's the most exciting day of his life, and yet he is a dead ringer for that chairman himself. And that is how I assume they came up with this expression. Doppelganger, meaning somebody who looks exactly like another. And...
Oh, and Clement has challenged.
That's repetition.
What?
Looking like someone else.
It's a repetitious thought, but he wasn't repeating any words in just a minute, and that's what this game's
cheap
about.
laugh.
Plus, what kind of name is Friedrich, for God's sake? Friedrich?
So, well tried, Clement. There's not enough reaction from the audience for you to give you a bonus on this occasion. Right, Tony, you have the subject still, only got a point, of course. 37 seconds, doppelganger, starting now.
7:42, Hamburg.
Right, Stephen.
We had those numbers before, the 7 and the 4.
No, we had
was it?
17 before.
Was it?
17 something. 17.
Well, 7.
18 something it was, wasn't it?
18 something.
Oh, was it? Fair enough, carry on.
That's right. Doppelganger, still with you, Tony, starting now.
1405. Hans Doppelganger leaves the small hamlet where he has a small cottage.
Right.
Zwei kleiner.
Yes.
Too small.
Definitely too smalls.
Well, there, okay.
Yes. Well, Stephen, you've got in now. 27 seconds, doppelganger, starting now.
Wer reitet so spät durch Nacht und Wind? Es ist der... Hello?
Julian's challenge. Yes, Julian.
Well, that's deviating, isn't it? A foreign language?
No, he's still speaking. It's words, isn't it?
Allegedly.
I know. Yes, but it sounded correct to me, so... 24 seconds, still with you, Stephen. Doppelganger, starting now.
Those were the words of Goethe, the...
Clement challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Speaking English.
All right!
I have your point.
Oh, we've got the Freud clacking, right. So, a bonus point to you, Clement, because they enjoyed your interruption and wasn't a challenge. And Stephen has another point for the interruption. 23 seconds, doppelganger, Stephen, starting now.
Les sanglots longs des violons de l'automne blessent mon cœur. Paul Verlaine's poem, of course, a doppelganger of that same poet, lived next to me in Sheriff Road when I was in that part of the world. Very extraordinary to have someone who is so entirely a simulacrum of another individual. Almost freakish. There was a belief, it's rather kind of, Tales of the Unexpected, that if you saw your doppelganger, it meant you were going to die.
So Stephen Fry is surging now and surging forward in the game. I don't know what else that could mean otherwise. He got other points, and one for speaking as a whistle went. He's now in a strong second place behind Tony Hawks, ahead of the other two. Clement, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is the Oscars. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
The Oscars takes place annually in Los Angeles to give prizes to the best of the kind, as crofts do with dogs. Oscars do with producers, directors, actors, and so on. The only Oscars I know are Lowenstein, Homolka, Quitak.
Tony challenge.
I think he was hesitating on his fourth.
I know,
Oscar.
yes. It was quite a challenge, wasn't it? Just getting the Oscar in with a surname that followed. 38 seconds, the Oscars with you, Tony, starting now.
1936, Los Angeles. Friedrich Doppelganger leaves the film set, knowing that this year he is going to win for his cinematography in the marvellous film Ich habe deine Geburtstage vergessen und das Geschwindigkeitsbeschränkt.
forgotten your birthday, that was in German.
Julian, you challenge.
I've forgotten your birthday, that was in German. Ich habe deine Geburtstag vergessen.
Deviation on that account.
Yeah.
What's that?
It was deviation on that account that he was just talking nonsense.
Yes, he was, because that apparently he was.
There was no 1936 film made in Los Angeles called Ich habe deine Geburtstag vergessen.
That's why he didn't win the Oscar.
But you said...
And how clever of you to understood the German too, Julian.
And bifocal, thank you.
And Clement, you understood.
He got the sex wrong for Geburtstag.
Dein Geburtstag.
Dein Geburtstag, not deine
Quite right.
Geburtstag.
It was all horrible.
Yes, Doppelganger was a transsexual, we all know that.
You seem
I
very
don't
well
think it makes
informed.
any difference, because Julian has got the subject, and there are 22 seconds, Julian, on the Oscars starting now.
I was nominated for an Oscar for my role in Carry On Columbus, and I went along to Los Angeles. Who should I find sitting next to me but Madonna?
Stephen
Sorry,
challenged.
but McDonald.
I know,
It
there's
was
a
mutt butt,
hesitation.
actually. Mutt butt.
Disgusting.
There it is.
Well, you might well hesitate after thinking Madonna. 12 seconds with you, Stephen. The Oscars starting now.
The statuette was designed by Cedric Gibbons, the great art director or production designer of MG, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios. And a remarkable thing about it is it was apparently called that because an Uncle Oscar was, yes...
Tony challenge.
Oh, dear.
Repetition of
You swine.
I can't give you 2 points, one for hesitation, one for repetition, but you get 1 point and the subject, and you've cleverly got in with 1 second to go. Oh, you won no friends, but you have the subject. The Oscars are starting now.
10, 6...
The end of that round, Tony Hawk's, another points there, has increased his lead, but he's not a lot ahead of Stephen Fry, and then just behind him are Julian, Clary and Clement Freud equal. And Stephen, it's also your turn to begin. The subject is playing a proscenium arch. 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
Well, I ought to describe to our radio listeners that we're actually on a stage here at the Old Vic in the Waterloo area of London. And it is a famous theatre which has a proscenium arch. That's to say, you know, when the curtains come across, rather than one of those thrust apron sort of things that they have at Chichester and other modern places for theatrical entertainment, it's a tradition which I cling to. It means you have an audience on one side and you have the boards to tread, the rostrum, the dais, however you want to call it, and there's a definite kind of atmosphere, a tingle you get from being in a place like this, a special something that comes from playing a proscenium arch. The proscena in Latin theatre, which derived from the Greek of that type, was, of course, a much rounder, more amphitheatrical structure. However, we've... Yes?
Julian, you challenge.
I think we had 2 theatricals.
Yes.
Well, amphitheatrical is one word.
Amphitheatrical, he said.
As in an amphitheatre.
Well, I'm not going to argue, but I thought you said...
No, he's quite right. He did have theatrical, and this is amphitheatrical. It was his one word. So, Stephen, you've still got the subject, and you have 15 seconds on playing a proscenium arch, starting now.
As a result, what you have is wings, the left and the right, known as prompt and opposite P. And this gives, again, as I say,
Tony challenged.
Well, it's not known as opposite P.
It's OP.
It is
OP
OP,
or opposite
yes.
P. It is, yeah.
Opposite P, is it?
Yes.
No, it's
P and OP.
Well, I'm just going for an opposite P now.
OP, right, which is opposite prompt, actually. 8 seconds for you, Stephen, playing a proscenium arch, starting now.
What I could be said to be doing now as I address these lovely people here on the Royal Circle and in the stalls is playing a proscenium arch.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of playing.
No, it's on the card, darling.
It's on the card. Yes, but I think you did it because he has been playing it for a few years and hadn't spotted it. Anyway, 2 seconds, still with you, Stephen, playing a proscenium arch, starting now.
And there is nothing I would rather be doing.
So, at the end of that round, Stephen Fry started with that subject and actually finished with it, got a lot of points in the round, and has really surged forward from, because at one time he was trailing all of them, but now he's only 1 point behind our leader, Tony Hawk's, and equal in third place are Clement Freud and Julian Clary, but they're a few points behind the other 2. I mention all that because they're moving into the final round. Tony, a lovely theatrical subject. I don't know where we're going to go with this one. I'm a bit nervous of it, but it is what the actress said to the bishop. We're rather laying ourselves open here, but we'll risk it and say, Tony, it's your turn to begin. So take that subject, go for 60 seconds if you can, starting now.
1922. The Bishop Friedrich Doppelganger is entertaining the lead actress of his production Ich habe deine Geburtstage vergessen, das Beschwindigkeit beschränken. Everybody wants to know what the actress said to the bishop on that day, but nobody there spoke German and was able to take it down. And so it has fallen down the ages for us.
Right. Stephen,
2 downs.
Down the ages and down, taking it down. Right. 37 seconds are available, Stephen. What the actress said to the bishop, starting now.
Knowing actresses, it's most likely to be, did you catch my Hedda Gabler, my Lord Bishop, rather than anything of the double entendre kind, which we associate, of course, with that phrase, do we not? They might also say, you are aware, are you not?
Tony, challenge.
I think repetition of say.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Are we not?
Yes, very likely.
Yes. Tony, another point to you. 25 seconds. Continue what the actress said to the bishop, starting now.
What the actress said to the bishop is something which isn't necessarily that relevant to us today. But I suppose because it's the subject, that makes it magnificently so. So I should carry on pretending that I'd ever even said that. What the actress said to the bishop is commonly perceived to be rude. But I happen to know because I was there, the first actress speaking to
So Tony Hawk somehow kept going till the whistle went without embarrassing any of us. And
I wouldn't say that.
And let me give the final situation. Clement Freud finished in 3rd place alongside Julian Clary, who really shone this week, and Stephen Fry, who also shone exceptionally well last time, shone again, but he was just 2 points behind Tony Hawk. So we say, Tony, you're our winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 fine, intrepid and talented players of the game, Stephen Fry, Julian Clary, Tony Hawks and Clement Freud. I also thank Janet Staplehurst, who's helped me keep the score, and she's blown her whistle with great accuracy and aplomb. We thank our producer, who's Chris Neal, and we're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're very grateful to this lovely audience here at the Old Vic Theatre in the Waterloo area of London, who's come again from all parts of the metropolis to cheer us on our way. Have fun. We've enjoyed ourselves. I hope you have. From the audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and from the panel, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute!